Chapter 3860. Ha! Duanmu Liangxing, this official really admires you. You are really indulging in fantasy. The ghost judge mocks. Although this official is a ghost, this official is not something that a Confucian cultivator like you can capture. Not good. The ghost judge is naturally not like those ownerless wandering souls. As long as he struggles, Xiaohua's mind will not easily capture him into the inside of the space, not to mention that this ghost judge's strength far surpasses Xiaohua's. However, contrary to the judge of ghost and Xiaohua's expectations, wherever Xiaohua's mind passed, the judge of ghost's fog, which had not moved in the slightest, as steady as a boulder, began to slowly move towards Xiaohua. Although the fog was struggling with all its might, it was as if there was a string pulling it, and it began to move faster and faster. Xiaohua suddenly feels that the fog's movement is not being pulled by his mind. Instead, he feels that the fog is taking the initiative to rush into his space. In an instant, Xiaohua's heart is startled. This is not the ghost judge's scheme? Thinking of this, how can Xiaohua still dare to capture this fog? He hastily retreats, preparing to dodge. But in the blink of an eye, the ghost judge suddenly accelerates, not allowing Xiaohua to withdraw his mind, and like lightning, rushes into Xiaohua's space. Xiaohua is greatly alarmed. His body is already riddled with scars, and now his heart is as cold as ice. The ghost judge also lets out a heart-wrenching scream, looking even more desperate than Xiaohua. The instant the black fog rushed into Xiaohua's body, Xiaohua's heart truly died like ashes. After scheming for so long, he still fell into the scheme of the ghost judge. However, he still wanted to fight to the death. He desperately pulled the black fog and flew towards his own space. He understood very well that as long as he fell into his space, any ghost or judge would be at his mercy. However, Xiaohua didn't think that the ghost judge would give him this opportunity. However, the strange thing was that the black fog didn't resist at all. Under the tremendous force of his mind, the black fog immediately crashed into the inside of Xiaohua's space. What made Jade Archive Xiaohua even more shocked was that the moment the black fog fell into the inside of the space, a formless golden dot fell out of the black fog. The black fog was like a piece of clothing. After stripping it off, Xiaohua could see its curvaceous body. An extremely familiar feeling came from that golden point. Gold origin. Xiaohua suddenly realized. Without any hesitation, he immediately used the Big Dipper God Fist in midair. The metal origin changed direction and rushed into Xiaohua's bones. After the bones were tempered, there were naturally meridians, spiritual fire, and so on. Xiaohua was in pain, but he was also enjoying the joy of advancing. The metal origin, the thing that Xiaohua yearned for even in his dreams. Now, it actually appeared in the clone of an underworld judge. It really made Xiaohua surprised, very surprised. However, when the metal origin rushed into the space, waves of origin fluctuations spread throughout the entire space. Waves of mountain roars and tsunami waves were produced in the space. Layers of starry sky rippled in Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua already understood the ins and outs of the matter. This metal origin was the origin of the world. Even the ghosts of the underworld should be able to use it. Therefore, when the clone of the underworld judge came out of the underworld, it was discovered by Zhu Zi, Zheng Zi, and Sun Zi for some unknown reason. The three literary sages naturally didn't allow the ghosts of the underworld to harass the hidden immortal continent. Therefore, a battle broke out. In the end, although the three literary sages suppressed the ghost, they couldn't completely eliminate it. In the end, the three literary sages could only leave behind wooden statues and wills, and even their own children to complete the heavy task of suppressing the ghost. Of course, when the wills of the three literary sages joined hands, they were able to eliminate 70% of the underworld judge's ghost. The reason why they couldn't completely eliminate the ghost back then was definitely because of the metal origin. However, today, the ghost's body gradually formed and it also had some success in refining the metal origin. It was preparing to break out of the restriction when the heavenly dog eclipse of the moon was at its densest. Of course, this ghost's plan was extremely successful. The ghost formation of the 9 underworlds origin drove the netherworld chi and wandering souls to destroy the underworld judge's body. The metal origin of the fire origin destroyed the wooden statues and wills of the 3 literary sages. If the underworld judge could stop at this moment and return in time, Xiaohua definitely wouldn't have stopped it. In fact, Xiaohua wouldn't have been able to stop it. However, the underworld judge's greed didn't change. After obtaining the metal origin, it still coveted the permit. It didn't care that it only had 30% of its strength left and wanted to use its domain and ghost tool to obtain the permitha. However, it just so happened that it encountered Xiaohua, a Taoist cultivator who wasn't a Confucian cultivator like Duanmu Liangxing. It absolutely couldn't imagine how complex and profound Xiaohua's knowledge was. It also didn't think that Xiaohua would have a space that others definitely wouldn't have. Of course, what the underworld judge didn't expect the most was that Xiaohua's space already had the fire origin and earth origin. Under the influence of the 2 origin powers, the metal origin in its body was no longer under its control. It took the initiative to enter Xiaohua's space. By the time it realized that something was wrong, it was already unable to escape its fate. At this time, it was already unable to separate the metal origin from its body. It was said that success was due to Xiaohe and defeat was due to Xiaohe. It was nothing more than this. It was destroyed by the metal origin that it obtained and involuntarily fell into the inside of Xiaohua's space. Even if its strength was exceedingly high, once it fell into the inside of the space, wasn't it still up to Xiaohua's words? After an unknown amount of time, Xiaohua collected the metal origin. After thinking through all the causes and effects, he couldn't help but sigh inwardly. However, at this time, he couldn't afford to slack off. Just as he was fighting a life and death battle with the underworld judge, the 9 ghost caves were still erupting endlessly. There was still an endless stream of wandering souls rushing out. However, there was a faint outline of the pitch-black blood moon in the night sky. The lunar eclipse seemed to be coming to an end. Let the test come a little more fiercely. Xiaohua laughed loudly and unconsciously raised his head to let out a long roar. The wounds that were pierced by the metal origin were previously difficult to heal. However, after Xiaohua used the metal origin to temper his body, these wounds had already healed. Xiaohua had gotten rid of the great enemy in his heart, and his entire body was relaxed. He raised his eyes to look at the outline of the blood moon and released his consciousness. Now that he had the underworld's yuan qi in his mind, it was even easier to collect the netherworld qi and wandering souls that were spewing out. The ghost qi that was spewing out from the 9 ghost caves, the wandering souls that surged out, and even the stranger things that came later, didn't even touch the ground before they were immediately collected by Xiaohua into the inside of the space. They didn't cause any damage to Wuyuan County, Jingyue County, and Fanchong County. After a long time, the blood-red moonlight gradually appeared, and the yang qi overflowed again. Xiaohua's body could feel the obvious Tai Yin qi, and among the 9 ghost caves, 3 of them glowed with Buddha light and Aoran qi. Gradually, the qi of the netherworld was retracted, and the wandering souls started to decrease. Another hour passed, and the sky suddenly became pitch black. This darkness was not as dark as the underworld judges, but the temperature of the night sky didn't drop. Xiaohua understood that this was the darkness before dawn. The night of the 15th of July finally passed. The wandering souls no longer appeared, and the other 6 ghost caves no longer spewed out netherworld qi. Even if the 3 ghost caves still had some ghost qi, it was nothing under the yang qi. Fellow Taoist Green Robe. Xiaohua was really tired. He collected his consciousness and flew down to the undulating mountain range below him. He raised his voice and asked, Wuyuan County, Jingyue County, and Fanchong County can be put away. I wonder how the lives of the millions of villagers in these 3 towns are? Green-robed Xiaohua didn't answer, but in the night sky, rays of light appeared one after another, and layers of formations rippled. After a few moments, green-robed Xiaohua landed beside Xiaohua with the Kunlun mirror in his hand. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and looked at the town in the dark night. At this time, the town was so quiet and there wasn't a trace of sound. The candles that could be seen at night, at this time, it was an extravagant hope. Fellow Taoist. Green Robe Xiaohua said in a low voice. If I guessed correctly, more than 300,000 villagers died. Those souls were sucked into your space along with the netherworld energy. Hiss, more than 300,000? Xiaohua sucked in a breath of cold air and said involuntarily, how could there be so many? There aren't many left. Green Robe Xiaohua sighed. Wuyuan County, Jingyue County, and Fancheng County, these 3 towns have about 1 million people. These people are just like what Zhu Qing said, they are already on the verge of death. Even if tonight's 100 Ghost Parade didn't happen, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to live for long. Moreover, the ghost that appeared tonight is the underworld's judge. This guy's death chi is really powerful. Once a mortal comes into contact with this death chi, their soul will immediately leave their body. This is also because fellow Taoist asked I to set up a large array in these towns in advance. If it wasn't for this array, not to mention 300,000 people, even 1 million people wouldn't be able to escape tonight's massacre. Coo coo coo. All of a sudden, the lonely sound of a rooster crowing rang out from nowhere, breaking the silence of the night. This sound was exceptionally loud in the night sky, and at the same time, it was exceptionally warm. I bet. Green Robe Xiaohua said with a smile, this rooster won't live past today. If someone eats him, then it's good. Xiaohua said meaningfully, just like you and me, even if we have to sacrifice some, it will be worth it if we can save some people. Fine, fine. The one who will be sacrificed is not you. Green Robe Xiaohua waved his hand that Xiaohua couldn't see and said, quickly let I go back, there are a lot of disciples waiting at home. Hee, I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist. Xiaohua smiled and stored the formless nascent soul into his lower danton. These several 100,000 merit points have already landed on fellow Taoist's head. That's right, fellow Taoist, the light hole that the ghost judge came out of disappeared after fellow Taoist collected that guy. Since the 3 literary sages' wooden statues fell inside, I'm afraid there's something fishy about it. Green Robe Xiaohua, who was as greedy as Xiaohua, didn't forget to tell Xiaohua before entering the space. The novel The Story of the Cultivation God will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform. At the same time, there's also a 100% chance of a lottery gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click on the plus sign at the top right to add friend, search for the public account, Kdred, and follow. Hurry up. Chapter 3861. How could Xiaohua not know what the green-robed Xiaohua was thinking? So he laughed and said, rest assured, green-robed fellow Taoist, even if you didn't say it, the scholarly fellow Taoist would be worried. That wooden statue had the will of the literary sage, so it should contain the secrets of the scholarly cultivators. Moreover, Sage Zhu message clearly stated that the wooden statue of the ancestral shrine is of the Xiantian realm, and the clan records are of the later generations. The ancestral shrines of the Zhu, Xing, and Sun families have long disappeared. If I'm not mistaken, they should be in this light cave. Alas, suppressing the underworld's magistrate in the ancestral shrine, this is really unimaginable. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, how could I believe it? Xiaohua smiled and landed on the ground. This was a dilapidated temple. The previous battle had already torn down this small temple beyond recognition, leaving only rubble at the foot of the mountain. Xiaohua's divine sense swept over and his brows unconsciously wrinkled because there was no trace of the ancestral shrine in his divine sense. The light cave from before had disappeared without a trace, as if it didn't exist at all. What do you think, fellow Taoist? Xiaohua released the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua. Xiaohua sensed for a moment and shook his head. Previously, there was a strong righteous qi on the wooden statue, but now I can't sense it at all. I'm afraid the 3 literary sages did something. Yes, there must be a restriction. Xiaohua nodded. Otherwise, it would be impossible to suppress the ghost, and it would be impossible to hide from those who persecuted the Zhu, Zheng, and Sun families. Since there is a restriction, it should be related to the Buddhist sect. Xiaohua smiled and said, I'll entrust my happiness to you, fellow Taoist. After saying that, Xiaohua returned to his middle dantian. Xiaohua used the Heaven's Eye again and used the escape technique to escape underground. Knowing that the ancestral shrines of the three families were definitely here, Xiaohua carefully searched the area. Even though he had the Heaven's Eye ability, it still took him the time to eat a meal before he found a strange little in the depths of the ground, as if he was looking for a needle in a haystack. There was a tiny bit of psyche power and a wisp of noble spirit on it, but it was really insignificant in the underground. Seeing such a small, Xiaohua understood that this was the Shumi Buddhist formation of the Buddhist sect. He pinched his chin and looked at the motionless that didn't even flicker with a faint radiance. He thought to himself, with my cultivation base, breaking this Shumi Buddhist formation isn't too difficult. However, the problem was that if he was not careful, he might destroy the ancestral hall inside. This was disrespect to Zhu Zi, Xing Zi, and Sun Zi, the three sages of literature. Moreover, how could the Buddhist formation that the three sages of literature had set up together to suppress the ghostly magistrate be so easy to break? The chances of being careless were higher. If I want to obtain the true heavenly book insight, I'm afraid I can't be so reckless. The ancestral tree is like the innate qi, and the family tree is made of silk and silk. The first sentence clearly meant that there was Xiantian true qi in the wooden statue of the ancestral shrine. However, this Xiantian true qi, what was the use of it? Did it have anything to do with the heavenly book? Could it be that the true enlightenment of the heavenly books was this innate true qi? As for the second sentence, did it mean that there was silk and silk hidden in the family tree? The silk and silk contain the family tree of the younger generation? Silk and silk? Family tree? Or perhaps? Thinking of this, Xiaohua's eyes suddenly lit up. Almost in disbelief, he took out the book that he had obtained from the old woman of the Zhu family in Jinghua City from the space. This book was originally made of silk, and it corresponded to the so-called family tree silk and silk. However, there was no family tree written in it. When the book made of silk and silk was taken out of the space, it immediately flashed with a faint Buddhist light. Similarly, the small dot also flashed with the same rhythm of Buddhist light. They attracted each other and the silk and silk flew towards the small. Great! Xiaohua clapped his hands and praised from the bottom of his heart, immortal grass with others, leaving fragrance in my hand. At that time, my cultivation base was low and I didn't think about the heavenly book insight. However, because of a moment of kindness, I broke the curse of the old woman of the Zhu family and obtained this silk and silk. I really didn't expect that I would be able to use it today. And after so many years, the family of the old woman of the Zhu family in Jinghua City should have already turned into yellow soil. Just when Xiaohua's heart was filled with joy, the book gradually unfolded and turned into a cloud-like silk and covered the small. However, after covering it, no matter if it was the silk or the dot, there was no movement at all. No, it seems that something else is missing. Xiaohua looked at everything in front of him and secretly calculated in his heart. Yes, this is silk and silk. There should be a family tree, and even there should be descendants. Xiaohua smiled and said, "It seems that the task of opening the ancestral shrine will fall on the heads of Zhu Cheng and the other Confucian family descendants." Thinking of this, Xiaohua stretched out his hand and collected the silk and turned it into the book again and put it into the space. Then he escaped from the ground and rushed into the air. At this time, dawn was breaking in the east and a fresh breath filled the entire sky. Although there was no trace of green beyond the three towns, the faint vitality after the wind and rain was already in sight. Cough, cough. This was the sound of the old woman coughing weakly in the morning. Creak. This was the sound of the woman gently pushing open the wooden door. Although this sound was accompanied by the woman's slight sigh and even grief, it was still the sound of life. Ooh. Even more were the sounds of people crying after discovering that their family members had died. The grief of the living was the remembrance of the dead. There were also many sounds that were born at dawn. These sounds fell into Xiaohua's ears one by one. Among them, there was joy, sorrow, worry, and worry. No matter what kind of emotion the sound was, it made Xiaohua feel a sense of joy. It made him feel that last night's life and death battle was worth it, that last night's life and death situation was meaningful. When Xiaohua's figure flew to the sky above Zhujia village, under the bright sunlight, Zhujia village was actually a field of silence. Not even a single person's shadow could be seen. Xiaohua's soul sense swept over and immediately understood. As the saying goes, the ignorant are fearless. The people in the 3 towns didn't know what happened. They didn't know that last night they had already experienced a life and death situation that they had never seen before. Therefore, they woke up early in the morning as usual and prepared to find food to eat. They prepared to struggle through the next day. Everyone in Zhujia village knew of the dangers of the night, so no one dared to rashly come out. Zhujia village's restriction was still open as they quietly waited for Xiaohua's message. Dang dang dang. Xiaohua's mood was extremely good. He laughed and asked loudly. Confucius said, "A friend from afar is coming, isn't it also good?" Taoist Xiao? You've returned? An unusually surprised voice came from within Zhujia village. Immediately after, a young man stepped on a cloud and rushed into the air. Zhu Xiang? Seeing this young man's appearance, Xiaohua was slightly stunned. However, in an instant, Xiaohua understood something. He cupped his hands and said, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist Zhu." This person was naturally Zhu Cheng, who had already taken the rejuvenation pill. He looked extremely similar to the dead Zhu Xiang. Seeing Xiaohua cupped his hands, Zhu Cheng hurriedly bowed in return and said, "AI, this one still has to thank Benefactor. If it wasn't for Benefactor, how could this one be like this?" Taoist Xiao. While speaking, the group of Zhujia village disciples all flew into the air and followed behind Zhu Cheng. They bowed and said, "Many thanks to Benefactor for saving our Zhujia village disciples again. No need to thank me, no need to thank me." Xiaohua helped everyone up and was about to speak again when he suddenly felt that something was wrong. When he looked at everyone, he saw that everyone's eyes were filled with a kind of burning desire. Xiaohua immediately understood. He hurriedly waved his hands and said, "Fellow Taoists, the rejuvenation pill that this one gave to fellow Taoist Jew was something this one obtained by chance during an auction. This one also thought that it was a simple pill and didn't pay much attention to it. Who would have thought that fellow Taoist Jew would actually become so young? This is really unexpected." That's right, it was really unexpected. This was the inner voice of all the Zhujia village disciples. In just one night, all the Zhujia village disciples saw with their own eyes the head of the Zhujia village, who was on the verge of death, turn from old to young bit by bit. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they would definitely think that Zhu Cheng was Zhu Xiang reborn. Xiaohua's words were obviously perfunctory. At least he didn't show that kind of unexpected surprise. Obviously, he knew the effects of this rejuvenation pill. However, since Xiaohua didn't say anything, everyone couldn't say anything either. They could only stand up with some regret. "Benefactor?" Zhu Cheng said in a low voice, "How is it?" "Everything is already in the past," Xiaohua said with a smile. "Moreover, your Zhu family, Zheng family, and Sun family don't need to guard the ghost cave anymore." Really? Zhu Cheng was overjoyed. Xiaohua thought for a moment and replied cautiously, "This one thinks so, but this one can't guarantee it. If it's possible, you 3 families should guard this place for a period of time. Of course, this one thinks that there's no need to use your life to strengthen the seal." That's good, that's good. Zhu Qing immediately thought of Zhu Xiang and couldn't help but shed tears. After a moment, Zhu Cheng came to his senses and hurriedly said with a smile, "Benefactor, please come with me. This one doesn't know how to thank you." Xiaohua waved his hand and said, "The great calamity has just passed. Within the 3 towns, more than 300,000 people died. If the remaining people don't have food to fill their stomachs, they might not be able to survive tonight. Although Fengxiang country has food for disaster relief, it might not be able to come in the next few days. Fellow immortal Zhu, disaster relief is the most important thing today." Yes, this one understands. Zhu Cheng hurriedly said, "This one has already arranged everything last night. My Zhu family has a very good relationship with the government of the 3 towns. This one will send Zhu family disciples to Jingyue County and Fancheng County. This one will personally go to Wuyuan County. If benefactor has time, you might as well go with this one. This time, this one will definitely spread benefactor's name everywhere. That's not appropriate. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said, this one is a Dao sect cultivator. If my reputation is too great, it will definitely attract the attention of the Immortal Palace. So it's like this? Zhu Qing thought for a moment and said with a smile, benefactor, you're thinking too much. Benefactor, at this time, not only should you not hide your cultivation and merit, you should also expand your reputation. Especially this kind of merit of saving people, it should be even more publicized. The novel The Legend of the Cultivation God will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform. At the same time, there will be a 100% chance of drawing a big prize for everyone. Now open WeChat, click the plus sign at the top right to add friend, search for the public account, Dread, and follow it. Hurry up! Chapter 3862. Why is that? Xiaohua was stunned. He had always been careful in doing things. Even if he did something good, he didn't dare to leave his name because he didn't want to attract the attention of the Immortal Palace. Even now, after the Immortal Palace had conquered the Black Wind Ridge, he still wanted to hide his cultivation. But he never thought that this Zhu Qing would actually advise him to show his strength and not to hide it. However, Zhu Qing is the descendant of Zhu Zi and the head of a scholarly family. His vision must be higher than others. Since he said so, there must be some truth to it. Xiaohua really wanted to hear it. Hee. Zhu Qing said with a smile, benefactor, please wait a moment. I will tell you in detail after I send the disaster relief people out. Xiaohua nodded. In addition, you don't need to go to Wuyuan County. Let someone else go. This Xiao and you have another important thing to do. Okay, this one understands. Zhu Qing didn't have any objection to Xiaohua's assignment. After sending the people to bring the food, he said with a smile, benefactor, what's the matter? Does your Zhu family have a genealogy? Xiaohua asked. Of course. Zhu Qing nodded. Every family has a genealogy. Although my Zhu family has declined, this genealogy has never been lost. Okay, you go and get it. Then follow this one to find Zheng and Sun Qing. Xiaohua urged. Zhu Qing was a bit confused, but he didn't ask and flew into the Zhu family village. After a while, Zhu Qing came back with a red booklet and respectfully handed it to Xiaohua. Xiaohua took it and roughly looked at it. He saw that this genealogy was written by Zhu Zi. Inside were the names of the Zhu family's children. Zhu Cheng and Zhu Xiang's names were on the last page, and the last one was Zhu Hua. He should be the youngest son of Zhu Cheng. Take it first and follow this one to find Sun Qing and Zheng. Xiaohua said as he returned the genealogy to Zhu Cheng. Zhu Cheng took it and carefully put it away, nodding, benefactor, please. Zhu Cheng flew forward while Xiaohua followed behind him. A moment later, Xiaohua asked, fellow Taoist Zhu, earlier you said that I shouldn't conceal my cultivation level. Why is that? Don't tell me you don't know that the Immortal Palace will use some methods to suppress our Taoist cultivators when their cultivation reaches a certain level? Benefactor, have you heard of the Buddhist sect? Zhu Qing asked with a smile. Xiaohua nodded and said, of course I know. However, the Buddhist sect has the Great Thunderclap Temple in the Western Paradise. Our Tao sect doesn't have such a strong backing. What about the Longevity Town in Yu Province? Zhu Qing said with a smile. It said that the Buddhism sect is going to build a 99 feet tall golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva there. This is something that the Immortal Palace can't tolerate. Similarly, the Big Leiyin Temple can't interfere. Why is the golden body already there? Even the Immortal Palace doesn't dare to easily topple it. Naturally, Xiaohua also knew about this matter. With Zhu Cheng's reminder, Xiaohua immediately came to a realization. What fellow immortal Zhu said is what the people's hearts desire? That's right. We Confucian cultivators have always emphasized the hearts of the people and the will of the people. To put it bluntly, the noble spirit is also the human aura that has been deposited in the world. All Confucian cultivators who want to cultivate to the great Confucian realm of the fifth stage of essence energy have to experience the world of mortals. They have to comprehend the origin and application of the noble spirit in the world of mortals. Therefore, Confucian cultivators know the importance of the hearts of the people the most. Zhu Qing nodded and said, the Buddhist sect didn't invest a single Buddhist cultivator in the longevity town. They only relied on the piety of countless good men and women to build a 99 feet tall golden body of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Isn't it because the immortal palace has misgivings about the hearts of the good men and women in the hidden immortal continent? Benefactor is admittedly a Tao sect cultivator, but if you have accumulated a lot of merits and millions, tens of millions of ordinary people are deeply grateful to you, do you think the immortal palace will risk universal condemnation and kill Benefactor? In particular, you're just a lone cultivator. Even if your cultivation is extremely high, you're still different from the Buddhist sect. The immortal palace won't be afraid of you overturning the heavens. So that's how it is, I understand now. Xiaohua was truly convinced. The vision of the family head of a Confucian cultivator family was truly extraordinary. The depth of his consideration of a problem was also not something that ordinary people could reach. Also, Zhu Qing continued, as long as a person lives in this world, no matter how many good things you do, it's impossible to satisfy everyone. There will definitely be people who say good things about you, and some people who say bad things about you. Since that's the case, why should you care about what others say about you? Just do what you have to do. Benefactor, don't you know the cultivation methods of Confucian cultivators? I'm sure you've also read the ancient books of Confucian cultivators. Benefactor, you should also know about the so-called art of alliance and collaboration. Zhu Qing continued to explain, it's the same principle as what I just said. Whether it's a Tao sect cultivator, a Buddhist sect arhat, or a Confucian cultivator, no matter how high or low their cultivation is, they must have enemies and old friends in this world. Cultivators who don't have enemies can't exist in this world. Similarly, cultivators who don't have close friends can't exist in this world. Since that's the case, why should Benefactor hide your cultivation? You only need to ally with your old friends and attack your enemies. That's all. Benefactor, the immortal palace you mentioned is actually not a monolithic entity. Although it's controlled by the school of the military, the Confucians, the Mahists, and the legalists all have literary sages serving in it. Therefore, there may be conflicts. Benefactor, as long as you ally with some people and repel others, even if your cultivation is beyond the tolerance level of the immortal palace, what danger will you be in? Even the immortal emperor of the immortal palace sometimes has no choice. In particular, everything depends on the specific situation. Previously, the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect were like family. Of course, the Taoist cultivators couldn't show their faces. Benefactor, if you show your cultivation, you'll be courting death. Now, the situation between the Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect is tense. The primordial chaos ancestor of the Taoist sect is restless after being released. The immortal palace can't control the primordial chaos ancestor, so the immortal palace may need another Taoist cultivator to restrain the primordial chaos ancestor and use another Taoist cultivator to disperse the pressure of the Buddhist sect. Therefore, the higher your cultivation is, the more you'll be favored by the immortal palace, and the more important you'll be. Of course, this is what I see as a bystander. It may not be right. Finally, Zhu Qing said, moreover, in the 3 continents, the most guaranteed thing is strength. As the saying goes, there's always someone better than you. If Benefactor provokes too much, maybe the immortal palace's almighty will find you unpleasant and kill you in an instant. Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart trembled. Zhu Qing's point of view was absolutely subversive to him. He really didn't expect that having a high cultivation would have such benefits. But thinking about it, it was normal. What was the Peng Lai immortal realm for? Wasn't it a place where the Taoist cultivators of the 5th level and above could feel at ease? If the immortal palace didn't have to worry about anything, wouldn't it be easier to just kill all the Taoist cultivators? Benefactor? While Xiaohua was pondering, Zhu Qing said in a low voice, it used to be not far away. Xiaohua came back to his senses and nodded. What fellow immortal Zhu said is quite profound. I have to think about it again. Yes. Zhu Cheng said with a smile, if it's not about you, anyone can say it. But as long as it's about you, you have to be overcautious and think thrice before you act. Benefactor, you have your own plans. My words are only for reference. Used to be a butcher. The marketplace where he lived was full of filth. Normally, there would be a lot of mosquitoes and flies. But this morning, not even an ant could be seen. On the narrow street, there were only weeping sounds, and even these weeping sounds were weak. Used. Naturally, without Xiaohua's instructions, Zhu Cheng had already released his divine sense to find Used and then whispered to him. Old Master Zhu? Hearing Zhu Cheng's voice, Used immediately jumped up from the ground. Looking at his wife and dog who were still sleeping soundly, he prepared to go out. Unexpectedly, just as he moved, his wife immediately noticed. Her thin and weak body slightly raised, and she called out in an extremely low voice, Dog's father. What are you doing? Last night, didn't you already go out? After coming back, you didn't sleep for the whole night. Why don't you sleep a little longer? Used was slightly stunned because when Used went out last night, his wife didn't make a sound. Even when he kissed her and dog, she didn't move at all. Used always thought that his wife was sleeping soundly the whole night. But he didn't expect that she knew his every move. Dog's mother? Used's nose twitched. It was said that husband and wife were birds in the same forest. When disaster struck, they would fly away separately. But now, facing life and death, his wife still knew his heart and didn't make him worry about her. He whispered, since you're awake, you should also get up. This is old Master Zhu of Zhu Clan Manor. Last night's matter is already in the past. I won't leave you again. Really? When Yu's wife heard this, she was happy in her heart. However, she still slowly got up. Then, she came to her senses and hurriedly touched her thin cheeks with her withered hands. She hurriedly said, Old Master Zhu is here. This concubine's appearance. Father. Maybe it was the two people's voices that woke Dog up, or maybe it was the empty stomach that woke Dog up from hunger. Dog opened his confused eyes and shouted, I'm hungry. Rumble. Hearing the word, hungry, not to mention Dog's stomach, even Yu's stomachs growled. Hee, it's all this old man's fault. Outside the wooden door, Xiaohua's voice came. This old man was thinking of giving you pills, but forgot to give you food. But then again, looking at Yu's size, this old man doesn't think you're lacking food. Taoist Master Xiao. When Yu heard this, his face changed greatly from fright. He didn't care to say anything to his wife and hurriedly ran out of the house, shouting, This little one kowtows in salute to Taoist Master. This little one has seen. When Yu saw Zhu Cheng's face, he was stunned again. He was somewhat confused. This was clearly Zhu Cheng, young Master Zhu. But why did Zhu Cheng say last night that young Master Zhu had already died in a ghost cave? Chapter 3863. This old man is Zhu Cheng. Zhu Cheng's face didn't have a trace of a smile. He only said indifferently, but last night, this old man was bestowed by Taoist Master Xiao and was able to extend my lifespan. Zeng was shocked. He looked at Xiaohua with even more reverence and greeted Zhu Cheng. This little one greets Master Zhu. Zeng, bring your family's big vat. Xiaohua smiled. This old man will give you food to cook porridge for Go and your wife. Good. Zeng laughed and hurriedly turned his head and shouted, Go Er's mother, quickly come and greet Taoist Master Xiao. Saying that, Zeng went to get the big vat again. No need to trouble yourself. Zhu Cheng said in a low voice, since Zeng is the descendant of a great scholar, he has a great relationship with my Zhu family. I didn't know about it before, but now that I know, how can I let them be in such a destitute situation? Although my Zhu family village isn't a luxurious house, it can still provide food for Brother Zeng's family. At this time, Zeng's wife came out holding Go. Seeing the sunlight flash, Zeng's wife's body slightly swayed, unable to support herself. Xiao Hua hurriedly raised his hand to support her, and Zeng's wife shouted, Thank you, Master Zhu, thank you, Master Zhu. Zeng opened his mouth, and his face showed a trace of embarrassment. He wanted to refuse, but looking at his wife's thin and weak body, and the child sticking out his tongue to lick his lips, he could only lower his head slightly. Xiaohua had already seen it, and said with a smile, "Zheng family and Zhu family were good friends, you don't need to doubt this point. Although there is no record of this in the books, think about it, if not for some things, how could your Zheng family and Zhu family be so close? How could your Zheng family's descendants and Zhu family's descendants have the same mission? Moreover, this old man might as well tell you that last night, at the critical moment, the wills left by Zheng Zi, Sun Zi, and Zhu Zi joined hands to fight against the enemy. Although they didn't let this old man pass any message to you, this old man thinks that if your three families can help each other, you will be able to accomplish your mission. Many thanks for your guidance, spiritual master." Seng Zheng's heart relaxed slightly and he bowed in thanks. In the past, perhaps you still had some doubts and couldn't let go of your face. Xiaohua smiled. However, if you knew that your Zheng family, Sun family, and Zhu family's ancestral shrines were all together, you would no longer doubt this old man's words. "What, Taoist master? Is what you said true?" Not to mention the past, even Zhu Qing was shocked. "Zheng, does your Zheng family have a genealogy?" Xiaohua didn't answer, but looked at Zheng and asked. Excitement appeared on Seng Zheng's face as he hurriedly said, Yes, please wait a moment." After saying that, Zheng rushed into the house and came out with a yellow genealogy book. When Xiaohua took the genealogy book and opened it, sure enough, the genealogy book was written in yellow handwriting. At the end was Zheng Yan and Zheng Yan. Presumably, Zheng Yan was Go Er's name. After reading it, Xiaohua returned the genealogy book to Zheng and said, "Take this thing first. When Zhu Cheng has settled your family, you will follow this old man to Jingyue County to find Sun Qing. Their genealogy book should be written in blue handwriting." Taking advantage of the time when Zhu Cheng called his family to pick up Zheng's family, Xiaohua took out the spirit jujube and gave it to Zheng's wife and Go. Then he looked at Go's muscles and bones with interest. Looking at Zheng's slightly eager eyes, Xiaohua smiled and dripped a drop of the spirit liquid refined by spiritual wisdom into Goer's mouth. Seeing that Goer's body was hot and dizzy, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Goer's aptitude is limited. I'm afraid he won't be able to achieve much by practicing my Taoist cultivation method. This spirit awakening fluid can open Goer's spiritual wisdom. If he reads books and practices Confucian cultivation, he will be able to reach the great Confucian realm. Thank you, spiritual master." Goer's mother had taken the spirit jujube and already had strength. Hearing Xiaohua's words, her face showed ecstasy. Tears dripped from her eyes, and she held her child and was about to kowtow. That ecstasy was even stronger than if she could survive. Zheng knew what his wife was thinking. Although he was a descendant of the Zheng family, he was a butcher after all and didn't know anything about economics. Now that he could hear Xiaohua's words, it was not only his fortune, but also the Zheng family's fortune. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Thank you, spiritual master. Thank you, Master Zhu." Zhu Cheng hurriedly helped Zheng up, and his eyes flashed with a strange light. In fact, Xiaohua didn't need to personally check Goer's aptitude. Just from Goer's dull eyes, Zhu Cheng could see that Goer's aptitude was mediocre. But after taking Xiaohua's spirit awakening fluid, Xiaohua actually concluded that Goer could reach the great Confucian realm, which really surprised Zhu Cheng. However, Zhu Cheng would never doubt Xiaohua's words. He couldn't help but think of his own child. "Spiritual Master Xiao." Zhu Cheng slightly bit his lips and whispered, "My son." Before Zhu Cheng finished speaking, Xiaohua smiled and said, "Fellow immortal Zhu, you have a son at an old age. Zhu Cheng is born with deficiencies. Although he is much smarter than others, his future achievements are limited. Take this spirit awakening fluid too." Xiaohua said, took out another jade bottle and handed it to Zhu Cheng. Zhu Cheng's hands trembled a little, and he hurriedly took it and put it into his arms. Xiaohua said again, "There is a lot of spirit awakening fluid in this jade bottle. The Zhu family, the Zheng family, and the Sun family can all use it, but each person can only take one drop. If you take too much, without my mental cultivation method, your life will be in danger." Hearing that there was a lot of spirit awakening fluid in the jade bottle, Zhu Cheng was even more delighted and thanked him loudly. This bottle of spirit awakening fluid could create many great Confucians. Not only the Zhu family, but also the Zheng family and the Sun family could gradually revive. Not long after, a servant of the Zhu family came and took the Zheng family's wife and back to the Zhu family village. Xiaohua took Zheng and Zhu Cheng to Jingyue County again. Although Sun Qing of Jingyue County was already old, he still had a cultivation base after all. Compared to his previous family circumstances, it was unknown how many times better. Looking at Sun Qing's son, Sun Mi's quick-witted eyes, although he was still lacking when it came to dealing with people, how was he still the retarded Sun Qing spoke of? Looking at Sun Qing's happy face, Zhu Cheng was even more expectant of Xiaohua's spirit awakening fluid. Hearing Xiaohua's words, Sun Qing hurriedly found his family's genealogy. As Xiaohua guessed, it was recorded in blue handwriting. Finally, it was Sun Qing and Sun Mi. Xiaohua was overjoyed and explained the matter clearly. Sun Qing knew that he was going to find the Sun family's ancestral temple, so how could he refuse? Just as he was about to get up, Sun Mi suddenly fell to the ground and kowtowed to Xiaohua. Spiritual Master, I have something to ask of you. Junior? Seeing his stupid son call himself a junior in front of Xiaohua, Sun Qing's eyes almost fell out. He almost forgot to scold Sun Mi for disturbing Xiaohua. Xiaohua looked at Sun Mi kneeling on the ground with a smile. Xiaohua had only let Xiansong Zi and the other scattered nascent souls take the spirit awakening fluid made by developing spiritual wisdom. Sun Mi was the first mortal to take it, so he was a little curious about the real effect of this spiritual medicine, so Xiaohua asked, "What do you want to ask of me?" Previously, I was muddle-headed and couldn't remember everything that I saw. Now that I've taken Spiritual Master's spiritual medicine, everything that happened before can appear before my eyes. Everything that happened from my birth to last night is vivid in my mind. Junior's father has worked too hard for Junior's sake. Therefore, Junior saw that Uncle Zhu obtained Reverend's medicinal pill that could rejuvenate his youth. Junior boldly asked Reverend to bestow the medicinal pill, so that Junior could personally deliver it in front of Father to consume, to express Junior's gratitude. Hearing Sun Mi's clear and orderly explanation, Sun Qing's body trembled with joy. When he understood that this was Sun Mi's filial piety, Sun Qing cried like a child, feeling that all of his pain and hard work weren't in vain. Sun Qing also knelt down and hugged Sun Mi. There are no parents in the world who don't love their children. What your mother and father did for you is what we should do. You don't need to think too much. It's a pity that your mother couldn't see you like this. Otherwise, who knows how happy she would be. Father. Speaking of his mother, Sun Mi naturally also shed tears. It was as if the world in the past had nothing to do with him, and now, whatever he wanted to do, he couldn't. Sun Qing, Sun Mi, wait for me. Xiaohua smiled, took out a rejuvenation pill and handed it to Sun Mi. Sun Mi has filial piety, how can this old man not fulfill it? This is the rejuvenation pill, give it to your father to consume. Thank you, Spiritual Master, thank you, Spiritual Master. Sun Mi pulled Sun Qing up, carefully took the rejuvenation pill, and respectfully handed it to Sun Qing. Father, you've raised this boy for his entire life. Now, this boy is unable to repay you. This is the rejuvenation pill that I begged Spiritual Master Xiao to give. Father, please consume it. In the future, this boy will definitely show filial piety to Father and revive our Sun family's business. Good. Sun Qing took the rejuvenation pill, but didn't consume it. He wiped his tears and said, now that Spiritual Master's matter is important, Father will accept this pill first and consume it later. Yes, Father. Sun Mi naturally obeyed his father's instructions, but Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and said, don't. If you consume it now. I'm not here, but it's easy for something to happen. Sun Qing naturally didn't know how many disasters and karma the rejuvenation pill had caused. However, since it was Xiaohua's idea, and also his boy's filial piety, Sun Qing consumed the rejuvenation pill. He felt traces of numbness in his meridians, and a long-lost vitality gradually spread throughout his body. Father? Even though Sun Mi was already mentally prepared, when he saw his father slowly becoming a young man similar to him, he couldn't help but be shocked. Alright. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Sun Mi, this old man has already done what I promised you. Now, your father will follow this old man to find your Sun family's ancestral hall. You can wait at home by yourself. Yes, spiritual master. In Sun Mi's eyes, Xiao Hua was no less than a deity. Sun Mi respectfully replied. Spiritual Master Xiao, please. Sun Qing and the others similarly bowed and said. Xiao Hua nodded. He brought along the auspicious cloud and flew towards the ancestral hall. Zhu Cheng and Sun Qing carefully followed behind him. Chapter 3864. Along the way, Xiao Hua scanned the area with his divine sense. He saw that the Zhu family really did have some tricks up their sleeves. Although they didn't have a lot of people, the distribution of food was much better than his. If nothing unexpected happened, the remaining 600,000 people in the 3 towns would no longer have to worry about their lives. As for the current Zhu Cheng, he actually already somewhat understood why Xiao Hua brought him, Zheng and Sun Qing to find the ancestral shrine. This must be related to the bone he gave Xiao Hua that year. It would be unrealistic to say that Zhu Qing didn't have some thoughts in his heart. However, when Zhu Qing thought about the kindness Xiao Hua showed him that day, and the kindness he showed to the 3 families last night, as well as the kindness he showed to the millions of secular people in Wuyuan County, Jinyue County and Fanchong County, Zhu Qing admittedly felt a bit bitter in his mouth. However, he already made a decision in his heart. For a benevolent and righteous cultivator like Taoist Xiao, some ordinary selfish motives really don't count for much. The 4 of them escaped underground. However, after just a few hundred feet, Sun Qing was unable to support himself. After Xiao Hua sensed it, he simply waved his big sleeve and brought Zhu Qing along with him to escape underground. Seeing that it was getting deeper and deeper, Zhu Cheng and the others were overwhelmed with shock. They didn't think that their ancestral shrine was actually hidden so well. If it weren't for Xiao Hua, they wouldn't have been able to find it even after 10,000 years. It's here. Even Xiao Hua himself found the location of that small dot with great difficulty after using Heaven's Eye. After Xiao Hua waved his hand and laid down a barrier, he raised his hand and pointed. Here? Zheng looked left and right at the khaki-colored brilliance, but he really couldn't see anything. Zhu Cheng looked left and right, then asked tentatively, Benefactor, is this an illusion outside the ancestral shrine? As for Sun Qing, he simply didn't say anything, quietly waiting for Xiao Hua to reveal it. Xiao Hua slightly shook his head, then took out the bone and said with a smile, Zhu Cheng, this is the heavenly book's true explanation left behind by your Zhu family. Do you know? Yes, this is an item left behind by my ancestors. Zhu Cheng straightened his face and nodded. But even my ancestors couldn't understand the mystery in it for many generations, and my Zhu family was looked down upon by the Confucian cultivators in the world because of the true enlightenment of the heavenly book. Therefore, after you rescued me from the prison of the Bronze Pillar country, I offered this thing to you. This thing has nothing to do with my Zhu family anymore. Hee, fellow immortal Zhu, you worry too much. Xiao Hua said with a smile. That's not what I meant. If it belongs to your Zhu family, this old man will return it to your Zhu family. Even if it belongs to the Zheng family or the Sun family, this old man will not covet it too much. Spiritual Master. Sun Qing glanced at Zhu Cheng and said, You've given our 3 clans a new lease on life. If you have any orders, our 3 clans wouldn't dare to disobey. Since fellow immortal Zhu has already offered this item to our benefactor, I'm also willing to offer my clan's genealogy to our benefactor. Yes, I'm the same. Zheng hurriedly echoed. There's no need for that. Xiao Hua said with a smile as he raised the bone. There are 2 gathas engraved on it. Its ancestral wood resembling Xiantian Qi, genealogy silken descendants. Oh! Zhu Cheng, Sun Qing, and Zheng stared blankly for a moment. Xiao Hua took out the book. With a wave of his hand, he once again used the silken cloth to wrap around the small bone. He said with a smile, this old man is untalented. Previously, I had a fortuitous encounter and happened to obtain this book. Inside it, there's a strange silken cloth. Silken cloth? Zhu Cheng's heart tightened. He hurriedly asked, "Benefactor, is this the secret you were talking about earlier?" Xiaohua thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "I won't hide it from fellow immortal Zhu. Previously, this Xiao did indeed encounter another branch of your Zhu family. This book is the reward for helping them remove their curse." Thank the heavens! Zhu Cheng was truly speechless. He raised his hands and clasped them together towards the heavens as he prayed, "I also thank spiritual Master Xiao for your care towards my Zhu family." Xiaohua said with a smile, "Of course, forgive this Xiao for not being able to tell you the location of that branch of Zhu family's descendants right now." No matter. Zhu Cheng said with a smile, "I'm already very happy to know that they're living freely in that place." Xiaohua pointed at the silken cloth and said, "The first line of the Gatha is ancestral would resembling innate qi. This Xiao already saw it last night. Your 3 ancestral shrines should be together, right inside this silken cloth. The last line is clan records silken cloth descendant. We'll have to rely on the clan records of these 3 fellow immortals." "All right." Zhu Cheng was the first to agree. He took out the Zhu family's clan records. However, the clan records were placed beside the silken cloth without any changes. Sun Qing said in a low voice, "Descendant? Fellow immortal Zhu, since it's a descendant, how can we determine if it's a descendant of the Zhu family? I'm afraid it can only be my Zhu family's blood essence." Zhu Cheng was used to using blood essence to strengthen restrictions, so he was the first to think. "Old Master Zhu, you can try first." Zeng Qing nodded. "If nothing unexpected happens, it should be so." "All right." Zhu Cheng nodded and forced out his blood essence. When the blood essence fell on the clan records, red names rushed out from the clan records, like pink butterflies fluttering around the silken cloth. Seeing the noble qi faintly seeping out from the void, Xiaohua smiled and looked at Sun Qing. The excitement in Sun Qing's heart was not any less than Xiaohua's. He hurriedly took out the genealogy book and dropped a drop of blood essence onto the Sun family's genealogy book. Thus, just like Zhu Cheng, blue names flew out from the genealogy book one after another, corresponding to the red names. The red and blue characters danced on the silk, looking extremely beautiful. It's this little one's turn. At this moment, Zeng family had never felt so important before. Looking at Xiaohua's expectant gaze, Zeng family straightened his chest and said, "Not to mention blood essence, even if this little one's life is given to Taoist Xiao, this little one is also willing." As he spoke, Zeng family put his index finger in his mouth and bit off a piece of flesh. Blood flowed out from the finger. "Fellow Taoist Zeng has taken out too much blood essence." Xiaohua smiled and said, "This Xiao owes you a favor." Zeng family's clan records felt hot in his heart. He took out the clan records and smeared the blood on his finger on the clan records. Wang. Yellow names flew out from the Zeng family's clan records. However, just as these names flew out, the red and blue names from before emitted buzzing sounds and rushed towards the yellow names. When the red, yellow, and blue characters collided, there was a rumbling sound. Strange inscriptions appeared from the 3 characters. When all the inscriptions fell on the silken cloth, the cloth rapidly shrank and wrapped around the tiny boom. When it was extremely small, Wanxiang birth appeared again. That small, almost invisible dot expanded with a loud rumble when the silk fell. The huge wave pushed Xiaohua and the others away by more than 300 meters. And within the silken cloth, an ancestral shrine that was also 100 feet in size appeared underground. Outside the ancestral shrine, red, yellow, and blue clouds shrouded the ancestral shrine. The ethereal atmosphere was as solemn as an immortal's palace. "Is this the Zhu family's ancestral hall?" Zhu Qing asked in disbelief as he looked at the majestic structure in front of him. "If there is no accident, this should be the ancestral shrine of your 3 families." Xiaohua looked at the simple and unadorned building and said with a smile, "You will know when you enter." "Taoist Xiao, Please go first. Zhu Qing hurriedly raised his hand and said. Xiaohua waved his hand. This is the ancestral shrine of the Zhu family, Zeng family, and Sun family. This Xiao is an outsider. You and the other masters should go first. But Zhu Qing didn't say much and agreed. He floated into the red, yellow, and blue clouds. Sure enough, the red clouds appeared and wrapped around Zhu Qing, slowly sending him into the ancestral shrine. Oh, not good. Seeing the red clouds, Xiaohua's heart was moved. He suddenly thought, damn it, does this ancestral shrine also require bloodline to enter? Otherwise, how can it suppress the underworld judge? After waiting for Zeng Qian and Sun Qing to enter the yellow and blue clouds respectively, Xiaohua also took a deep breath and rushed to the front of the three colored clouds. Sure enough, just as Xiaohua came in contact with the clouds, a gentle but tenacious force pushed Xiaohua, not allowing him to get close to the ancestral shrine. Damn it! Xiaohua scolded with a smile. This is entering the bridal chamber and forgetting the matchmaker. Taoist Xiao. Zhu Qing and the other two saw that Xiaohua didn't go in and didn't go in. They came out and said, if Taoist Xiao can't go in, we won't go in either. Looking at the three family disciples who didn't forget kindness, Xiaohua said with a smile, no matter, you wait and see this Xiao's method. After saying that, Xiaohua's body flashed with a bronze luster. He then took a few steps forward and came in contact with the tenacious force. Xiaohua raised his hands and formed the seal of a mountain, smashing it towards the clouds. Boom! The clouds surged and the silk shook extremely. A layer of faint Buddhist light appeared in the midst of dizziness. Within this Buddhist light, the heavenly flower and the heavenly maiden were all present. The Buddha and the heavenly dragon were all present. However, where the Buddhist light rippled, layers of mountains fell from the sky. Not to mention the heavenly flower and the heavenly maiden, not to mention the Buddha and the heavenly dragon, they all turned into nothingness. Sure enough, Xiaohua said with a smile, under the restriction of this origin formation is a Buddhist formation. As long as a flaw appears in the Buddhist formation, the power of the origin formation will be greatly reduced. After saying that, Xiaohua condensed the Buddhist seal and struck it a few times. He raised his hands again, as if he was holding on to a door, and shouted, open! Immediately after, the muscles on Xiaohua's arms trembled. Countless forces of the stars and moon fell from the sky. The red, yellow, and blue clouds were torn apart by Xiaohua. After that, Xiaohua's figure turned into wind and rushed into the ancestral shrine. Seeing Xiaohua enter, Zhu Qing and the others all praised in their hearts. Then, Zhu Qing and Sun Qing urged their figures to rush into the clouds. Xiaohua was a step slower. Just as he was about to step into the clouds, suddenly, a powerful divine sense swept over from the ground. Following this divine sense, a cold shadow fell. Xiaohua's restriction was instantly torn apart by this cold shadow. The cold shadow was like a huge shadow that covered Xiaohua. Xiaohua simply didn't have any reaction, and immediately stood there blankly like a stone statue. However, this blankness only lasted for a moment. Xiaohua moved again. He raised his head and looked at the clouds that were close at hand. A trace of a strange smile appeared on his face. His raised leg fell down, and his entire figure disappeared into the silk of the ancestral shrine. Chapter 3865. Xiaohua had already entered the ancestral shrine, so he didn't notice the previous change. The warning sign of the barrier being torn apart was also blocked by the origin formation of the ancestral shrine. Xiaohua stood in front of the wooden door, squinting his eyes. The ancestral temple was made of blue bricks and green tiles, and the faint inscriptions on them flowed slowly with the clouds, isolating the divine sense. Moreover, Xiaohua could vaguely hear the sound of a wooden fish and the chanting of scriptures coming out of the ancestral temple. It must be here, Xiaohua said with a smile. It's most suitable to suppress the ghost judge in this ancestral shrine. Benefactor. Zhu Qing, Sun Qing, and Zeng Zeng, who came in later, respectfully stood behind Xiaohua and whispered, "What about me? How do I get in?" Xiaohua raised his hand and said, The three of you will naturally push open the door and enter. Then, Xiaohua explained, the clouds before were blocking the restriction of the ancestral shrine, preventing others from entering. Since we're already here, there shouldn't be any other obstacles. You just need to go in. Alright. Zhu Cheng nodded, then knelt down in front of the wooden door and kowtowed. This junior, Zhu Cheng, is unfilial. It wasn't until I entered that I found the Zhu family's ancestral hall. This junior kowtows and apologizes. I hope that the ancestors of the Zhu family will forgive this junior's sins. Zhu Cheng's tears flowed down as he spoke. Before Zhu Cheng could stand up, Sun Qing impatiently knelt down by Zhu Cheng's side. Tears similarly covered his face as he kowtowed and apologized, and the wild joy and regret on his face was obvious. He hesitated for a moment before kneeling on the other side of Zhu Cheng. Like Sun Qing, he kowtowed and whispered something as tears flowed down his cheeks. After the three of them finished kowtowing and repenting, they stood up, looked at each other, and walked to the front of the vermilion door. They solemnly raised their hands and pushed it in unison. Understood. The sound of the wooden door being pushed open was very stiff. However, when the three of them looked into the ancestral hall, the three of them rushed in almost at the same time. He saw that it was a rather large room. It was empty inside, except for an altar at the head of the room. Behind the altar, there were three wooden statues standing on the wall. This wooden statue was precisely the one Xiaohua had seen in the night sky earlier. It was used to suppress the ghost judge. Of course, there were many deep holes on the three wooden statues. Some of the holes even penetrated their bodies. Zhu Zi and Zheng Zi's wooden statues had their arms and legs broken. Even more than half of Sun Zi's head had been cut off. There was no trace of it. However, although these wooden statues were damaged, Zhu Zi's wooden statue was covered in layers of faint red brilliance that swirled up clouds like surging sparks. On Sun Zi's and Zheng Zi's wooden statues, blue sparks and yellow sparks similarly swirled up clouds and surged towards the sparks. The three colored sparks contrasted with each other, and a mighty, solemn, dignified, and awe-inspiring aura emanated from the three wooden statues, enveloping the entire ancestral hall. Ancestors? The three of them rushed into the ancestral hall and respectfully kowtowed again. Only then did they look at the wooden statues of their ancestors. Xiaohua entered after them. Standing in front of the three wooden statues, he bowed and saluted. Junior Xiaohua greets the three seniors. Last night, although Junior joined hands with the three seniors to resist the enemy, Junior's cultivation was limited. The damage to the three seniors' wooden statues was also Junior's fault. However, Junior asks the three seniors to be at ease. The ghost suppressed by the seniors has already been eliminated by Junior. The curse of the three seniors' descendants has also been broken by Junior. Whether it is Wuyuan County, Jingyue County, Fanchang County, or the Zhu, Xing, and Sun families, they are all safe now. Yes, Junior once again reports to the ancestors that Xiaohua, Taoist Xiao, is benevolent and righteous. His heart cares for the world, and there is no difference between Taoist and Confucian. With Taoist Xiao's help, the majority of the villagers in my Wuyuan County, Jingyue County, and Fanchang County were saved. Moreover, with Taoist Xiao's help, the villagers in the three counties also had food to tide over the disaster. Therefore, Junior brought Taoist Xiao to the ancestral shrine. If the ancestors left any shade in the ancestral shrine, Junior is willing to offer it to Taoist Xiao. We also have the same idea. Sun Qing and Zheng Qian also whispered to the wooden statues. The three people's voices had just faded when they saw that the originally empty offering table respectively flashed with three colored clouds. The clouds were precisely holding a book. On the book, four large words flashed with dazzling light. Wasn't it True Explanation of the Heavenly Book? True Explanation of the Heavenly Book? There really is such an item? Not only was Zhu Cheng greatly shocked, even Xiaohua was overjoyed. At this time, Zheng Qian, who was standing in front of Xiaohua, suddenly laughed loudly. Haha, this world really has the true explanation of the heavenly book. With this item, this old man's literary star is just around the corner. You're not Zheng Qian, you? Who are you? Hearing this, Xiaohua couldn't help but be greatly alarmed. As he berated, he waved his hand and grabbed the true explanation of the heavenly book out of thin air. Xiaohua's heaven and earth sleeve technique was now very powerful. As soon as it was used, the entire ancestral shrine was enveloped by Xiaohua's technique. Strands of crystal threads flashed in the air like tiny dragons. A small Taoist wild cultivator also dares to snatch from this old man. Zheng Qian sneered and similarly waved his hand. Boom! Thousands of inscriptions rushed out like ants. With a series of loud sounds, the crystal threads were smashed into pieces. Xiaohua's heaven and earth sleeve technique was also defeated. Zheng Qian immediately waved his right hand and a gust of wind appeared. The 3 wooden statues along with the true explanation of the heavenly book all fell into his hand. Zheng Qian simply didn't stay in the ancestral shrine for long. His figure flashed and like a shadow, he swept past Xiaohua. Xiaohua clenched his fists and without hesitation, he smashed them towards the shadow. At the same time, he opened his mouth and a sword light flashed towards the shadow. A mere 5th-level essence energy dares to be arrogant? Zheng Qian's shadow had just flown in front of Xiaohua when it suddenly made a strange turn and charged towards the ancestral shrine's wall. Zheng Qian sneered and said, "If it weren't for the fact that you have some kindness towards the people of Fengxiang country, this old man definitely wouldn't let you go. Get out of the way." Boom! Not only did Xiaohua's fists miss, but his flying sword also missed. When the flying sword turned and chased after Zheng Qian's figure had already crashed into the wall. Although countless inscriptions rushed out from the wall, the ancestral shrine's restriction was still broken by the shadow. In the blink of an eye, Zheng Qian disappeared from Xiaohua's sight. Xiaohua was abnormally angry. Didn't he painstakingly show his kindness just to obtain the true explanation of the heavenly book? But he didn't expect that at the last moment, it would actually be taken away by this so-called Zheng Qian. Moreover, listening to Zheng Qian's voice, the person who came was at least a great grandmaster. He might even be a literary sage. His strength far surpassed Xiaohua's. "Where do you think you're going?" Xiaohua's mind raced as he secretly pondered over his own methods to deal with the enemy. His figure turned into a rainbow and rushed towards the hole, chasing after Zheng Qian. Zheng Qian's speed was extremely fast, but he was still not faster than Xiaohua. When Zheng Qian flew out of the ground, Xiaohua had already caught up. As soon as Zheng Qian came out of the ground, a dark shadow immediately flew out from his body and landed in the body of a thin scholar. That scholar was about 40 years old and had a thin face. The scholar looked at Xiaohua who was chasing after him, and his eyes revealed a trace of surprise. However, he still didn't plan to meet Xiaohua face to face. His whole body surged with an awe-inspiring aura, and his entire figure turned into a gust of wind. Along with an earth-shattering sound of wind and thunder, he instantly disappeared into the horizon. "Humph!" Xiaohua sneered. The figure of the green-robed Xiaohua, who had long been in control of the invisible nascent soul, swayed slightly in midair and rushed towards the place where the scholar disappeared. Xiaohua's body flickered with lightning as he chased after the scholar with almost the same speed as teleportation. In the blink of an eye, in the air hundreds of miles away, there was a loud bang. The brilliance of the Kunlun mirror penetrated through the void, and then Xiaohua, who was in midair, opened his delusion destruction Dharma eye, and a thick silver light immediately disappeared into the void, Kacha. There was a sound like a thunderclap, and the void in front of Xiaohua rapidly surged. Pillars of awe-inspiring aura rushed out from the void, and after a moment, the light and shadow distorted, and the scholar's slightly embarrassed figure appeared from within. "Damn thing!" As soon as the scholar appeared, his face showed a fierce expression as he cursed. "This old man didn't want to kill you, but you actually dared to use a spell to chase after this old man. Since that's the case, don't blame this old man for being ruthless." As he spoke, the scholar's figure strangely swelled, and a big hand like a huge palm leaf fan came grabbing at him. The big hand emitted a silver-white luster, and Xiaohua simply couldn't dodge before it grabbed Xiaohua's arm. Then, the luster on the big hand sharply increased, and it was sharper than a flying sword as it slashed at Xiao Hua's body. Damn it! Xiao Hua was really sullen. This scholar was definitely the strongest person he had ever seen. He could also be considered a Taoist cultivator with 1 foot in the 6th level of origin energy, but in front of this scholar he didn't have the slightest strength to resist. Clang! The silver-white luster fell and hit Xiao Hua's body, creating a series of sparks. Xiao Hua's Taoist robe was destroyed, but there wasn't a trace of injury on his body. Ka! At the same time, a golden light flashed, and Xiao Hua summoned the soaring dragon shears out of thin air, chopping at the silver-white big hand. A muffled groan, but it was actually suppressed pain that resounded in the air several dozen li away. The big hand quickly retreated, and Xiao Hua could clearly see that the scholar's sleeve had been cut off, and the silver-white skin on his arm was lacerated, and silver blood flowed out. Damn it, damn it, damn it! The scholar was extremely angry, and a thunderous roar surged around Xiao Hua. The scholar's figure also seemed to swell and become ethereal. Go! Xiao Hua's eyes slightly narrowed, and he calmly waved his hand. The soaring dragon shears flashed again in the air, and a golden light several hundred zhang long streaked across the vast sky. Unfortunately, the scholar's figure seemed to be a real shadow. The soaring dragon shears cut through the shadow, and in a moment, the shadow reconnected. Go to hell! Following the scholar's roar, Xiao Hua suddenly felt that the space several li to his left was extremely trembling, and long spatial cracks appeared without warning, quickly rushing towards him. The magic power in Xiao Hua's body froze, and he couldn't escape from this space. Chapter 3866. Xiao Hua was very anxious. He suddenly urged the heavenly law's embodiment of heaven and earth, and the power of the stars and moon fell with a loud bang. Roar! Xiao Hua roared, trying his best to resist the huge power that seemed to be like heaven and earth. At the same time, lightning flashed around Xiao Hua's body, and dozens of scattered nascent souls flew out from his lower dantian. As soon as they landed in the air, they immediately used teleportation to rush out of the imprisonment. The Confucian cultivator suddenly saw so many nascent souls and couldn't help but be stunned. A hurricane rolled in the air and suddenly wrapped around one of the nascent souls that had just teleported. GG. The nascent soul's face showed panic. His hands rubbed together, and a spell was used to fight against the imprisonment of the Confucian cultivator. Pa! The Confucian cultivator sneered, and the nascent soul was unexpectedly crushed by him. A powerful force was generated and rushed toward Xiao Hua's embodiment of heaven. Boom! Although Xiao Hua's embodiment of heaven only shook slightly under the force of the nascent soul's explosion and didn't suffer any damage, Xiao Hua's face became ugly again. Ha! Seeing that the nascent soul didn't have any special magical ability, the Confucian cultivator couldn't help but laugh. However, before his laughter fell, a burst of thunder sounded in the sky. Within 1,000 miles, red clouds flowed like blood. The dozens of nascent souls that had teleported out from Xiao Hua's lower dantian were now sitting cross-legged around Xiao Hua and the Confucian cultivator. It was a simple capital star array that surrounded Xiao Hua and the Confucian cultivator. What is this? Strange ripples flickered around the dozens of nascent souls, and streaks of lightning stretched across the surface of their bodies. The ripples covered an area of 100 miles around them. Although the Confucian scholar could not figure out what was going on, the power of heaven and earth contained in the ripples made him tremble with fear. The Confucian scholar didn't hesitate at all. He waved his hand and grabbed another nascent soul. With a bang, the nascent soul was killed without any suspense. However, just as the Confucian scholar's figure turned into a stream of light and was about to escape through the gap, a tricolored beam of light shot out from the gap and struck the Confucian scholar. The Confucian scholar was stunned and hastily dodged. It was at this moment that dozens of bolts of lightning descended from the red tribulation clouds and struck the dozens of nascent souls. The Confucian scholar was in the range of the nascent souls. The power of heaven and earth in the lightning immediately alerted him. He was stunned and exclaimed, "Lightning? Lightning tribulation?" Why are there so many nascent soul tribulations? What kind of lightning tribulation is this? What this Confucian scholar naturally didn't know was that the 100 scattered nascent souls in Xiaohua's lower dantian had already cultivated to the first tribulation's scattered nascent soul realm. Now, they had to go through a true lightning tribulation in order to break through the bottleneck of the first tribulation's scattered nascent soul realm. Xiaohua was originally worried about how these 100 scattered nascent souls would go through the tribulation one by one. Now, he met this terrifying Confucian scholar. When Xiaohua was powerless to deal with him, he immediately thought of the lightning tribulation. This Confucian scholar might not be afraid of the lightning tribulation of a first tribulation scattered nascent soul, but the lightning tribulation of 10 first tribulation scattered nascent souls would injure this Confucian scholar. What if there were dozens of first tribulation scattered nascent souls? In Xiaohua's opinion, even if the Confucian scholar didn't die, he would lose a layer of skin, right? As for all the scattered nascent souls coming out, Xiaohua also thought about it. Unfortunately, Xiaohua himself couldn't guarantee that he would survive under the lightning tribulation of 100 first tribulation scattered nascent souls. Boom! Under the lightning tribulation, the Confucian scholar hurriedly dodged. He didn't want to be affected by the lightning tribulation of the scattered nascent souls. However, even if he wanted to dodge, those dozens of scattered nascent souls weren't willing to let him dodge. These scattered nascent souls suddenly teleported towards the Confucian scholar, and all the lightning tribulation struck towards the Confucian scholar. Damn it! At this time, the Confucian scholar had already understood the intentions of these scattered nascent souls. Although he didn't know how Xiaohua did this, he looked at Xiaohua, who was also within the range of the lightning tribulation, laughed sinisterly, and teleported towards Xiaohua. However, before the Confucian scholar could fly a few miles, the entire area within dozens of miles was filled with the power of heaven and earth. Not only the Confucian scholar, but Xiaohua and the dozens of scattered nascent souls were also imprisoned in place by the lightning tribulation, unable to move. Gotcha! What shocked Xiaohua was that even the imprisonment of the lightning tribulation didn't seem to be able to stop the Confucian scholar's struggle. The space shattered like glass, and the Confucian scholar actually moved, but his movement was rather slow. Cha-cha-cha! At this time, the lightning tribulation fell on the scattered nascent souls. The scattered nascent souls lowered their heads and closed their eyes, forming the same strange seals in their hands. As the scattered nascent souls' spirit bodies melted layer by layer in the lightning, mysterious talismans surged within the spirit bodies. These talismans absorbed the power of the lightning tribulation while transforming the spirit bodies. All the scattered nascent souls grew healthily with the flickering lightning. The lightning tribulation naturally also affected the Confucian scholar and Xiaohua. Layers of lightning whistled towards the two of them. While the Confucian scholar gritted his teeth to resist the lightning, he glared fiercely at Xiaohua. As for Xiaohua, his lightning cultivation had already reached a certain level. His heavenly phoenix demon body flashed with a bronze brilliance under the lightning, looking quite relaxed. The Confucian scholar narrowed his eyes and did his best to resist the lightning tribulation. He secretly thought, after the lightning tribulation, this old man will definitely kill this brat. However, before the Confucian scholar could think, he saw the dozens of nascent souls suddenly raise their heads in unison. Their eyes flashed with a kind of mockery. Then, the dozens of nascent souls raised their hands at the same time. As the dozens of small hands rubbed, the lightning tribulation that fell on the nascent souls suddenly moved and swept towards the capital star formation. The Confucian scholar was shocked and hurriedly shouted, How is this possible? Yes, this was the lightning of the lightning tribulation. How could nascent souls control it? But the Confucian scholar didn't know that the dozens of nascent souls in Xiaohua's lower dantian were constantly being bombarded by the 5 qi righteous thunder. Although the 5 qi righteous thunder couldn't be considered a real lightning tribulation, the dozens of nascent souls were already very familiar with it. And now, the power of the lightning tribulation had been integrated into the bodies of the nascent souls. Although the lightning tribulation was the power of heaven and earth, The essence of the lightning tribulation was also lightning. The dozens of nascent souls had long been familiar with lightning. Although it was a bit difficult to control the power of the lightning tribulation, it wasn't impossible. Seeing the lightning tribulation of the dozens of nascent souls hit him, the Confucian scholar's face revealed a rare look of despair. There was even a trace of regret in his eyes. Of course, under the roaring power of heaven and earth, he didn't have any extra reaction. In an instant, the lightning completely drowned the Confucian scholar and Xiao Hua like an ocean wave. The power of heaven and earth was difficult to fathom, let alone when all the lightning tribulation hit together. Even Xiao Hua, who had already gone through many lightning tribulations and cultivated the lightning escape technique, with the heavenly phoenix demonic body and the bloodline of the absolute saint, Xiao Hua's body turned into flowing liquid under the lightning. Damn it! Xiao Hua endured the indescribable pain all over his body and the impact of heaven and earth's aura on his soul. He couldn't help but curse in his heart, "I'm rich. I never thought that the lightning tribulation would be so powerful when stacked together. Compared to the lightning tribulation of the legacy realm. Oh, it should be like this." Seeing that the lightning tribulation was like a huge furnace that wanted to refine his body, Xiao Hua suddenly had a trace of understanding. The absolute saint bloodline within the 13,200 million small dots in his body was once again stimulated. Under the impact of the lightning tribulation, it actually accelerated the fusion. Xiao Hua's current demonic body was unable to cope with this kind of lightning tribulation, let alone the Confucian scholar. Under the roar of the lightning tribulation, the Confucian scholar seemed to have disappeared, and there was no other sound. When the lightning clouds gradually disappeared and the lightning tribulation subsided, Xiao Hua's torn body was revealed. There were only 3 wooden statues floating in the air where the Confucian scholar had been. The wooden statues were riddled with holes by the lightning tribulation and looked like they would turn into ashes with just a slight movement. However, the 3 colored sparks in the ashes were still flickering with a faint brilliance. Huff! Xiao Hua let out a weak groan. He moved his arm with difficulty, and blood immediately burst out from his shoulder. However, Xiao Hua didn't care about the damage to his body. He grinned and still waved his hand. The soul-slaying Yuan light was released. As he chanted an incantation, the thing with a nose and eyes appeared from the sword gourd. Suddenly, the Zhuzi wooden statue let out the same weak voice. Then, a shadow flashed out from the wooden statue. Unfortunately, before the shadow could reach the wooden statue, the soul-slaying Yuan light turned into an arc and fell on the head of the shadow. The illusory figure waved both of his hands, and a pillar of noble qi tried to penetrate the void. However, because the illusory figure was too weak, he couldn't control the noble qi at all. Taking advantage of this perfect opportunity, the spirit-slaying vital light flashed between the illusory figure's head, and the illusory figure immediately split from the middle. Boom! At the same time, the green-robed Xiao Hua flew over from afar and released the Kunlun mirror. The remaining shadow was once again destroyed by the 3-colored pillar of light. Come in. Xiao Hua still didn't feel at ease. He released his mind and swept up the soul of the shadow that was about to enter the cycle of reincarnation. With the help of the origin power of the underworld, he took it into the inside of the space. Phew! Sensing that the soul of the scholar had been taken into the space, Xiao Hua let out a long sigh of relief. Looking around, he saw that the dozens of first tribulation scattered nascent souls were now standing quietly in the air. Xiao Hua understood that these first tribulation scattered nascent souls were different from first tribulation scattered immortals. Their strength was at most at the initial stage of the spirit-severing stage. Although their strength couldn't compare to that of a scattered immortal, they had more chances to pass the Mahayana stage lightning tribulation. Congratulations, fellow Taoists. Xiao Hua smiled and bowed. Many thanks, fellow Taoists. Although these dozens of scattered nascent souls weren't Xiao Hua's doppelgangers, they were still controlled by Xiao Hua. Hee, fellow Taoists, please come back. Let's comprehend the great Tao together. Xiao Hua patted his forehead and dozens of lightning bolts rushed out from his lower dantian. Each of them led a scattered nascent soul and took them into his body. Immediately, Xiaohua swept up the 3 already tattered wooden statues and flew to the ancestral shrine of the 3 families. When he entered the ancestral shrine with Once, who still hadn't woken up, Zhu Cheng and Sun Qin hurriedly greeted him and asked, "Benefactor, what happened?" The novel The Legend of the Cultivation God will have more fresh content on the official WeChat platform. At the same time, there will be a 100% chance of drawing a big gift for everyone. Open WeChat now, click the plus sign at the top right to add friend, search for the public account, Kdred, and follow it. Hurry up! Chapter 3867. Hehe, the cultivator entered the ancestral shrine by borrowing his former body. This has nothing to do with the past. Xiaohua was currently extremely weak, so he made a long story short. This cultivator has already been killed by this Xiao. As for who he is, this Xiao also doesn't know. If I'm not mistaken, he should be related to a scholarly family. Then he deserves to die. How could Zhu Qing not understand? Since this scholarly family was able to chase him to this place, this scholarly family must be one of the 3 scholarly families that persecuted the 3 families. They might even be the main culprit. Since this scholarly cultivator was able to borrow his former body, this scholarly cultivator's strength was far beyond his own. Even if he knew, it would be useless. However, there was still hatred in his heart, so he said in a low voice. Xiaohua placed the tattered wooden statue on the sacrificial table and said with some regret, "It's a pity that the true enlightenment of Heavenly Book was also destroyed." At this point, Xiaohua's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, "If possible, I would like to ask the 3 of you to work hard." What's going on? Is this the ancestral shrine? When did I enter the ancestral shrine? After being awakened by Sun Qing, Zhong Shou frowned and pinched his aching head. He looked left and right and whispered in astonishment, "Ancestor?" Zhu Qing didn't answer Zhong Shou's question. Instead, he knelt down in front of the wooden statue and prayed. Sun Qing naturally echoed him. Zhong Shou didn't dare to neglect and also recited what seemed to be familiar words. After the 3 finished praying, a 3-colored light flashed on the sacrificial table and another true enlightenment of Heavenly Book appeared. Good. Xiaohua clapped and said with a smile, "The sage's words are indeed trustworthy. This Xiao thanks you." Xiaohua waved his hand and the true enlightenment of Heavenly Book fell into his hand. However, this time, there was no abnormality. After Xiaohua opened the true enlightenment of Heavenly Book and looked at it for a moment, his face couldn't help but reveal an expression of surprise. "So that's how it is? Is this real?" Xiaohua closed the true enlightenment of Heavenly Book and put it into the space. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the wooden statue while secretly pondering. After a while, Zhu Cheng asked in a low voice, "Benefactor, is there anything wrong?" Zhu Cheng, Sun Qing, Zheng Zheng. Xiaohua moved his gaze away from the wooden statue, looked at the 3 people, and said word by word, "The true explanation of the Heavenly Book is just a guess. It's a strange sign that the 3 saints, Zhu Zi, Sun Zi, and Zheng Zi, discovered when they were comprehending the ancient secrets. This might be a mystery of heaven and earth, or it might be the true essence of Confucian cultivation. However, they still couldn't find the truth. Therefore, by telling you the secrets inside, I am not only not helping you, but also pushing you into the abyss of death." And the guesses of the 3 literary saints can be realized by this Xiao. This Xiao is also looking forward to seeing if the guesses of the 3 literary saints are true. Xiaohua continued, "Therefore, this Xiao wants to take away the items within the 3 wooden statues according to the records of the Heavenly Book true explanation." "Yes, I have no objections." Zhu Cheng immediately replied, "When I gave the bone to Benefactor, the things in the ancestral hall already belonged to Benefactor. So did the 2 of us." Sun Qing and Zheng Zi hastily replied. Xiaohua said somewhat awkwardly, "If the wooden statues of the 3 saints were in good condition, this Xiao would have taken them, but now, if the Xiao takes them, these wooden statues will immediately turn into ashes, so this Xiao is in a bit of a dilemma. Benefactor, please take them." Zhu Cheng looked at Sun Qing and Zheng Zi, then said to Xiao Hua with a smile, "The voices and smiles of the three ancestors have already been engraved in our hearts. These wooden statues are just a kind of sustenance. Now, these wooden statues are even more tattered. We feel even more uncomfortable looking at them." Presumably, Benefactor also understands that compared to these wooden statues, the prosperity of our three clans' descendants is more important. Good. Hearing this, Xiaohua didn't hesitate. He patted his forehead. 4-colored Zhenqi rushed out and covered the 3 wooden statues. Then, Xiaohua didn't release the 6 cauldrons. He just let the 6 cauldrons' qi flow out slightly from his middle dantian. Woo woo. A faint sound of wind came out from the wooden statues. 3 red, yellow, and blue Zhenqi, which were smaller than the tip of a needle, transformed into sparks and flew out from the wooden statues, following the 4-colored Zhenqi into Xiao Hua's middle dantian. Hong. As the 3 sparks fell into Xiao Hua's middle dantian, it seemed that the endless noble qi in the void condensed into a small qi pillar and fell into Xiao Hua's middle dantian. The 4-colored Zhenqi immediately overflowed with brilliance. Countless colors were born in the middle dantian. At the same time, the 6 cauldrons that had just been moved into Xiao Hua's middle dantian from the void also let out an extremely loud rumbling sound. They still transformed into huge cauldrons. 6 streaks of qi rushed out from the 6 cauldrons and danced around the Zhen qi that was constantly changing colors. One after another, incomplete images were born in the flowing light. These images were either mountains, rivers, the land, or the people, but no matter what the images were, the people or things in them were vivid and lifelike, as if they were full of vitality. Living qi. The qi that makes people live. Is this the true essence of Confucian cultivation? From meeting the waiter in Jinghua City, to meeting the Zhu family and obtaining the silk, to obtaining the first heavenly book of tortoise shell and the heart of heaven from the space that was about to collapse underground, to meeting the ghost cultivator Huang Yi in Tianmen Mountain, to meeting Ji-Man of Hutsu Stockade in Million Meng Mountains, to obtaining the second heavenly book of tortoise shell and the heart of heaven, to obtaining the true explanation of heavenly book and the 3 innate qi kindling. Everything seemed to be pushed by a big hand, allowing him to swim along an inexplicable path in the river of karma. Although Xiao Hua was still not sure whether he could successfully cultivate the true explanation of Heavenly Book, Xiao Hua faintly felt that even if the true explanation of Heavenly Book was wrong, it still allowed him to gradually unveil the most mysterious veil in the world, allowing him to see the true face of the Heavenly Tao one step further. Boom boom boom. In the space, whether it was the yang side or the yin side, violent rumbling sounds came again. The entire space expanded again under the hand of karma, and strands of invisible karma gradually wrapped around everyone in the space, including all the souls. Good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said with a smile, "If I have enough magic power, I can really foresee karma." Benefactor? Xiao Hua's voice had just faded when Zhu Qing asked timidly, "You're back?" "Oh, not good." Xiao Hua suddenly woke up and hurriedly looked at Zhu Qing. "Zhu Qing, what did you see?" "What did I see?" Zhu Qing was a little confused. His eyes turned quickly and he answered tentatively, "Benefactors suddenly disappeared 3 days ago, and today, benefactors suddenly reappeared. I didn't see anything." "Oh, very good." When Xiao Hua heard this, he unconsciously let out a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "I suddenly remembered that I had some things to deal with, so I hurriedly went out." "It's nothing. Let's go out now." Chapter 3868. Zhu Cheng was surprised at Xiao Hua's disappearance, but he immediately understood. He thought that Xiao Hua was going to deal with the Confucian cultivator who occupied Zheng's body, so he immediately shut his mouth. "Let's go." Xiao Hua smiled and looked around the ancestral shrine. The wall that was broken by the Confucian cultivator had already been restored. "Benefactor, please go first." Zheng heard Sun Qing's words when Xiao Hua was comprehending the karma law, so he knew that he had almost ruined something big. Now he was very careful. Xiao Hua looked at the fatty and smiled. "Zheng, it's already the year of the disaster, how can you still be so fat?" Anyone who sees you won't think that your family background is bad. Hee hee. Zeng smiled and said jokingly, this little one will gain weight even if I drink cold water. This little one also told my wife that if she and her dog are hungry, they can eat this little one's flesh. They definitely won't starve to death. Ha! Xiaohua laughed. Zhu Cheng and Sun Qing also laughed. Zeng's cautious heart suddenly relaxed. Xiaohua finished laughing and pointed at the vermilion door. This Xiao wants to go first, but this ancestral shrine is the ancestral shrine of your 3 families. This Xiao can't go out. Yes, this little one was wrong. Zeng woke up and quickly walked a few steps. Zhu Cheng and Sun Qing naturally followed him. The 3 of them gently pushed the vermilion door and it slowly opened. After leaving the ancestral shrine, Xiaohua put away the genealogy book and silk. Sure enough, the ancestral shrine slowly shrank and gradually disappeared. Xiaohua was not surprised and brought the 3 of them out of the ground. It was a sunny day on the ground. Xiaohua glanced at Sun Qing and said, Sun Qing, you go back home first. Bring Sun Mi and the other Sun family disciples to Zhu family village. This Xiao has something to tell you in detail. Seeing that Xiaohua did not return the genealogy book to him, Sun Qing vaguely knew what Xiaohua wanted to say. He nodded and left. Seeing Sun Qing leave, Xiaohua released his divine sense again and looked at the situation of the 3 towns. He smiled and said, Zhu Cheng, the Zhu clan is indeed worthy of being a descendant of a famous clan. To be able to pacify the 3 towns in 3 days, this Xiao is very impressed. I don't dare. Zhu Cheng didn't dare to show any arrogance on his face. He bowed and said, everything depends on Benefactor's food and Benefactor's divine abilities. If it weren't for Benefactor, this 1,000 miles of wilderness would have become a ghost prison. That's why our hard work is nothing. Perhaps. Xiaohua smiled and said, let's go. After working hard for a few days, I can finally taste the Zhu family's famous tea again. Yes, this one will definitely personally brew tea for Benefactor. Zhu Cheng was overjoyed. He urged the cloud to accompany Xiaohua to Zhujia village. At this moment, the Zhu clan manor was rather quiet. Other than a few family guards, some of the Zhu clan's disciples with high cultivation were outside busying themselves with disaster relief. Zhu Cheng originally wanted to send a message to have these people come back, but thinking that Xiaohua was most concerned about the lives of millions of villagers, he didn't send a message. He personally invited Xiaohua to sit at the head of the table and personally boiled water to make tea for Xiaohua. The women of the Zhu clan manor knew that the head of the Zhu clan was back, and they were all happy. Some sensible women even carried Zhu Cheng's youngest son, Du. Xiaohua had no choice but to give some elixirs to them. He also took out a drop of spirit awakening fluid and let Zhu Yi take it. When he saw his youngest son fall asleep, there was no change in Xiaohua's eyes. Zhu Qing knew that if there was no accident, the Zhu clan would have another great scholar in the future. Alas, this junior thanks Benefactor. Zhu Qing sighed and raised his teacup. This junior thanks Jinren Xiao on behalf of my ancestors. Ha, you're welcome. Xiaohua raised his teacup and said with a smile, I've always believed that God is watching what people do. As long as you do things honestly and behave yourself, all your efforts will always be rewarded. Even if I don't come, others will come. God will reward your Zhu clan, Sun clan, and Zeng clan. After drinking a few mouthfuls of tea, Xiaohua looked at Zeng and asked, Zeng, it seems that you and Guer have never taken elixirs, right? Zeng hurriedly got up. First, this junior doesn't know how to take the elixir. Second, if we can't see the sun on the second day, taking the elixir will be useless. Therefore, this junior doesn't dare to let Guer take it. Bring Guer here. You take the elixir with him. Xiaohua ordered. Benefactor, please wait a moment. Zhu Qing hurriedly got up and went out to ask the servants to bring Guer and Zeng's wife here. There was no special danger in taking the elixir to break the curse. After Xiaohua ordered them to take the elixir, Zhu Cheng and several servants of the Zhu clan skillfully guarded Zeng and Guer. Xiaohua was relieved. Then Xiaohua thought of something and walked out of the hall to the courtyard. Seeing that the place was big enough, he waved his hand and took out the mountain and river seal. A cloud flew out of the mountain and river seal, and the flying shuttle that was previously stored in the Yuang Ghost Cave landed in the courtyard. When the flying shuttle appeared, the Confucian scholars inside looked at the scorching sun in the sky and felt as if they could see the sun again. The Confucian scholar surnamed Song didn't have time to put away the flying shuttle. He bowed first and said, "Junior Zhui Yen Song Zixiong greet Senior. Thank you for saving my life." Junior Feng Ming Lu Jia greets Senior. The group of cultivators didn't dare to be negligent. They all flew out of the flying shuttle and respectfully saluted Xiao Hua, thanking him for saving their lives. "Get up." Xiao Hua looked at these vigorous young Confucian cultivators and said with a smile, "You are good friends of Zhu Xiang and Yu Zhongquan. Moreover, you are willing to accompany them even though you know that the ghost cave is dangerous. This kind of character is really a model for the younger generation of Confucian cultivators. This old man only needed to lift a finger to save you. Don't worry too much. Senior, please give us a name." Song Zixiong respectfully said, "Senior saved this junior. This junior doesn't even know Senior's name. How can this junior have the face to see others?" This old man, Dao Sex Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and didn't hide anything. Dao Sex Xiao Hua? Song Zixiong and the others were slightly stunned. They didn't realize at first, but after a moment, someone in the crowd exclaimed, "Xiao. Daoist Xiao? Senior is Daoist Xiao Hua of Black Wind Mountain?" Hearing the three words Black Wind Mountain, all the Confucian cultivators woke up. Half of them had a change in expression. Although these cultivators were young, they were all from Confucian cultivator families. They were very familiar with the grudges between Buddhism and Confucianism. Although the Zhu clan had declined and was besieged by other clans, the Zhu clan was still a scholarly clan, one that had produced a sage like Master Zhu. These scholarly cultivators felt that this was unfair, and since they shared the same ideals as Zhu Xiang, it was natural for them to befriend Zhu Xiang. If Xiao Hua was an ordinary Taoist cultivator and had saved their lives, befriending Xiao Hua wouldn't be a big deal. However, Xiao Hua was a Taoist cultivator of the Immortal Palace and had a fierce reputation. Although the legendary Xiao Hua was not the same as the Xiao Hua in front of them, the huge shadow of the Immortal Palace was covering the sky. It was inevitable that these Confucian cultivators would have obstacles in their hearts. Xiao Hua looked at these younger Confucian cultivators with interest and didn't say much. After a moment of surprise, Song Zixiong's eyes turned and he hurriedly asked, "Senior Xiao, I don't know, did Zhu Xiang and Yu Zhongquan escape the tribulation?" Alas, when I arrived, it was already too late. Xiao Hua shook his head slightly and sighed, "I could only save Yu Zhongquan. Zhu Xiang had already fallen." "How sad." Song Zixiong lamented, "I don't know where Brother Zhu's morning hall is. This junior wants to go and pay his respects." "Oh, I don't know." Xiao Hua replied, "Wait a moment. I will call Zhu Qing over and ask him." Zhu Qing came out. When he saw the flying shuttle and everyone, he was slightly stunned. After asking a few questions, he immediately understood. Of course, the young Confucian cultivators were also extremely surprised by Zhu Qing's resemblance to Zhu Xiang. However, although the two looked similar, their behavior was completely different. After a while, everyone got used to it. Zhu Qing already felt guilty about Zhu Xiang's death. Thinking that these people had gone through life and death with Zhu Xiang, his face became amiable. He immediately led these Confucian cultivators to Zhu Xiang's morning hall. Xiao Hua naturally didn't need to go, so he returned to the hall and sat down. His mind entered the inside of the space. When Jade Archive Xiao Hua saw the changes in the inside of the space, he couldn't help but be shocked. A towering tree extended out from the nether blood sea. It was brimming with vitality as it pierced into the sky. When it reached a height of 10,000 feet, countless branches extended out from various parts of the tree. They separately extended to the surroundings of the nether blood sea, covering an area of several tens of thousands of miles. Within the sea of blood, countless rays of bloody light rushed into the tree from the roots that were deeply embedded in the sea of blood. The tree roots in the Sea of Blood covered the entire Sea of Blood. They were several times larger than the tree trunk and crown above the Sea of Blood. What was even more strange was that there were two huge roots that connected the two continents through the Sea of Blood. The Netherworld lotus and Netherworld bamboo were growing on those continents. On the Netherworld lotus and Netherworld bamboo, the light of Shue Shue's helpless soul faintly flowed into the Netherworld fruit along the roots. This is the Netherworld fruit's roots from before? Jade Archive Xiao Hua's gaze swept over and immediately understood the origin of this huge tree. When Xiao Hua sent the Netherworld fruit's roots into the inside of the space, it wasn't this big. Even when Xiao Hua entered the Nether Wang Ghost Cave, the Netherworld fruit's roots didn't change much. However, after the wandering souls of the 7 ghost caves entered, the Netherworld fruit's roots crazily grew. In just a few hours, it had grown to such a majestic aura. At this time, on the Netherworld fruit tree, there were many things that looked like sparkling dewdrops condensing. Within these dewdrops, wisps of smoke-like souls slowly circulated. The bloody light of the Netherworld Sea of Blood entered these dewdrops through the Netherworld fruit's roots, nourishing these souls. What was special was that at the place where the Netherworld fruit tree protruded from the Netherworld Sea of Blood, there was a fist-sized ball of light emitting a faint brilliance. Zhu Xiang's soul was hibernating within. Above Zhu Xiang's soul, there were many other souls that also flowed out, occupying the main branches of the Netherworld fruit tree. However, these souls were much smaller than Zhu Xiang's. They were the wandering souls that Xiao Hua first used the Prometha realm to absorb into the space. Chapter 3869. Good. Jade Archive Xiao Hua looked at everything in front of him and praised. Although Zhu Xiang was cowardly and indecisive when he was alive, his filial piety was unparalleled in the world. He even sacrificed himself for the lives of millions of people. Now that he has entered the inside of this space, he is one of the first few souls to enter the underworld fruit tree. In the future, he will be of great use. Where is that Confucian cultivator whose sneak attack died? Jade Archive Xiao Hua was still thinking about the Confucian cultivator who sneak attacked him. He wanted to see what kind of background this Confucian cultivator had, but when he looked up, the Confucian cultivator's soul had already settled in one of the underworld fruits. Jade Archive Xiao Hua thought for a moment and smiled. Entering the underworld fruit tree is another life. In this life, it has nothing to do with him. I have disturbed him for no reason. It is not appropriate. Let's forget about it. And you also come here. Jade Archive Xiao Hua said and raised his hand to grab. Thousands of miles away, a huge ghost wearing official robes was pulled out from the depths of the Netherworld Blood Sea. This ghost was different from the one Xiao Hua saw before, but the official robes were exactly the same. The bloody light on the official robes became thicker and thicker, and wisps of bloody red constantly rushed into the official robes from the Netherworld Blood Sea. Gu gu mo. The ghost landed in front of Jade Archive Xiao Hua and hurriedly knelt down, respectfully saying something. Although Jade Archive Xiao Hua did not understand, when it reached his ears, he understood that it was begging the master of the underworld to spare his life. Jade Archive Xiao Hua extended a finger and pointed at the ghost's body. Boom! With a soft sound, the ghost turned into countless fireflies. As the fireflies danced in the air, some thick black crystal threads fell onto Jade Archive Xiao Hua's finger. Even more fireflies fell into the blood sea and disappeared without a trace. The black crystal threads merged into Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua's body shook violently and he hurriedly closed his eyes to think. After a long time, he opened his eyes and looked at the dark side of the space. He didn't say anything, but his eyes were filled with dread. After pondering for a moment, Xiao Hua raised his hand and flicked it. A strand of crystal thread flew into Zhu Xiang's soul. After that, Xiao Hua raised his hand and made a grabbing motion. The soul hooking brush also appeared out of thin air and fell into Zhu Xiang's soul. But the Jade Archive Xiao Hua said, Zhu Xiang, I entrust you with a heavy responsibility. I hope that after your soul matures, you can use the soul hooking pen to eliminate the grievances of the human world. and use the book of life and death to record the joys and sorrows of the human world. You are worthy of being an infernal judge of hell. Seeing that the soul-capturing pen has fallen into Zhu Xiang's soul, Xiaohua understands that Xue Xue has used the power of her soul to open the yin and yang of the space and obtain the power of the yin side of the space. To a certain extent, she is the mother of the yin side of the space. She can be compared with Huda God who has transformed into the 9 underworlds. Everything in the yin side of the space can only grow after her soul matures. The souls on the underworld fruit tree can only awaken after she wakes up. The order of the 6 paths of reincarnation in the yin side of the space must be established by Xue Xue. Immediately, Xiaohua stood in front of the netherworld lotus and looked at Xue Xue's soul. He once again checked the cultivation progress of the stone statue and prepared to leave the yin side of the space. Xiaohua suddenly raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "No. I still underestimated the power of the heavenly Tao. As long as the heavenly Tao exists in this world, it doesn't care about the loss of a person or soul. Even if Xue Xue doesn't control the yin side of the space, under the heavenly Tao, extreme yin must be yang and extreme yang must be yin. The cycle of yin and yang already exists in I's space. Without Xue Xue, this cycle is a kind of nature. With Xue Xue, this cycle is a kind of order. Previously, there was no living person in the yang side of the space, so there might not be life and death. Now that there is life and death, there must be a corresponding reincarnation on the yin side. I am really looking forward to it. I can't wait to see the mystery of reincarnation." Xiaohua's mind withdrew from the yin side of the space. He originally wanted to check on Yu Zhongquan's injuries, but at this time, Zhu Cheng returned to the hall with Song Zixiong and several other Confucian cultivators. Xiaohua looked at the several Confucian cultivators with interest and said with a smile, "It seems that this old man's reputation is still too fierce. Only a few of you have come to say goodbye." Song Zixiong said with a smile, "Senior, don't blame them. Their temperaments are good. We have all gone through some tests before, so we can trust them. It's just that they are not alone. They all have their own families behind them. Even this junior thought about it for a long time before coming to say goodbye to senior. After all, the longer we stay with senior, the more likely our families will be punished by the immortal palace. This is our fear. Please forgive us." In that case, this old man understands your intentions," Xiaohua said with a smile. "No need to be so polite." "Thank you, senior." Song Zixiong stood up and said respectfully, "But in this junior's opinion, senior is this junior's savior. Even if this junior thanks senior a few times, it's still within the etiquette of us Confucian cultivators. Presumably, the immortal palace won't punish us, right? Otherwise, wouldn't this junior become a heartless and unrighteous person?" "Yes, we all think so." The several Confucian cultivators behind Song Zixiong also said so. "Very good." Xiaohua nodded. "This way, Zhu Cheng and Yu Zhongquan didn't get to know you in vain." Song Zixiong raised his eyes to look at Zhu Cheng, then turned to Xiaohua and said, "Senior, in this junior's opinion, senior is far from the kind of vicious person who swallows 100,000 immortal soldiers. Moreover, you are more like this junior's granduncle. Presumably, there are some misunderstandings about senior's reputation in the immortal palace." It doesn't matter. It's already been spread around. What else can this old man say?" Xiaohua smiled and waved his hand, replying disapprovingly. Song Zixiong slightly bit his lips and said, "Junior knows of an opportunity that can let senior make friends with many Confucian cultivators. Perhaps it can help senior wash off this fierce reputation." "Forget it. This old man really doesn't care about this." Xiaohua still shook his head. "You all should hurry back." "Oh, right, bring your Chenkuan bags. This old man has some food. If we encounter any disaster along the way, we can help." Song Zixiong and the others were naturally very shocked. They had never seen a cultivator who valued the lives of the ordinary people of the hidden immortal continent so much. After they received the Chenkuan bags, Song Zixiong said again, "Senior Xiao, this junior feels that senior should really communicate more with our Confucian cultivators. This junior really hasn't seen many benevolent cultivators like you. Xiaohua was just about to wave his hand, when Zhu Cheng at the side said with a smile, Nephew Zixiong, what is the opportunity you mentioned? Can you say it clearly? Uncle Zhu, my Song clan knows that Jing Province's Chu clan has invited all the Confucian cultivators in the world to go to the Fiend God Blood Pool in Yen Province to find the Fiend God chess. If Senior Xiao can go to the Fiend God Blood Pool, wouldn't he be able to make friends with even more Confucian cultivators? And let others see Taoist Master Zhao's benevolent true face? Nephew's words are quite reasonable. However, whether to go or not, Taoist Master Xiao will make his choice. Nephew, you should return home as soon as possible, don't let your family worry. Zhu Cheng nodded and said, although Jin is no longer here, if nephew has any matters, you can come to my Zhu clan. This old man will help as much as possible. Yes. Song Zixiong and the others hurriedly bowed and said, Junior will take his leave. After Song Zixiong and the others were sent away, Zhu Qing turned around and looked at Xiao Hua, saying in a low voice, Benefactor, this one feels that Benefactor should still go to the Fiend God Blood Pool. Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. Previously, this one advised Benefactor that if necessary, it's best to reveal your cultivation. This Fiend God Blood Pool is a good opportunity. If Benefactor can suppress the scholarly cultivators inside, Benefactor's strength will be known by everyone in the world. Apart from the Immortal Palace, there will definitely be even more scholarly cultivator clans that will take Benefactor seriously. Zhu Qing smiled and said, moreover, Jing Province's Chu clan is a legalist clan, and they don't get along well with the Immortal Palace's militarists. Benefactor can make friends with legalists and borrow their strength to resist the Immortal Palace. Of course, at that time, apart from legalists, there will definitely be even more scholarly cultivator clans that will take Benefactor seriously. While they are using Benefactor, Benefactor can naturally use them. And this is the so-called alliance. Xiao Huan nodded and replied thoughtfully. That's right. This is the so-called alliance. Zhu Qing replied, according to this one's knowledge, Jing Province's Chu clan has coveted the Fiend God Blood Pool in Gun Province for many years. They've tried to enter several times, but were unable to succeed each time. Now that the Chu clan has sent out an invitation again, there will definitely be many scholarly cultivator clans that will go to the Fiend God Blood Pool. This is the perfect strategy for Benefactor to use. After replying, Zhu Qing didn't say anything else and quietly waited for Xiao Hua to think. Xiao Hua's destination this time was naturally the North Sea Dragon Palace. He had temporarily arrived at Zhu Village, and now that he had to turn back, Gun Province was also a place he had to pass through. Zhu Cheng's words were indeed reasonable, but Xiao Hua still hadn't considered clearly how he would appear in front of the scholarly cultivators. After all, he was a Taoist cultivator that the Immortal Palace was suppressing. If they wanted to kill him as soon as they saw him, wouldn't he be wasting his efforts for nothing? In addition, the reason Xiao Hua hesitated was that when he first arrived at the hidden Immortal Continent, he also received an invitation from Chu clan's Chu Muhuan. However, Xiao Hua didn't know whether Chu Muhuan's invitation was this Fiend God Blood Pool or not. While he was hesitating, Sun clan's Sun Qing brought Sun Mi over. Xing Zheng and Xing Yan also broke the curse and came over to thank him. Xiao Hua saw that the time was right and ordered Zhu Cheng to call back the Zhu clan's disciples that went out to provide relief. When everyone had gathered, Xiao Hua stood up and looked at Zhu Shi's portrait. He waved his hand and took out the three clans' genealogy records. He roughly explained the matter of the three clans' ancestral shrines. Finally, he said, this matter was originally a private matter between your three clans, so this old man couldn't interfere. However, since this old man received benefits from the three literary sages, I had no choice but to speak up. This old man hopes that Zhu clan, Xing clan, and Sun clan can become one family in the future. No matter when, you can see each other as family. The relationship between three clans is better than one. Chapter 3870. We will follow Taoist Master's words. From today onwards, we will leave these words in our ancestral teachings. Zhu Cheng and the others hurriedly bowed. Good. Xiao Hua smiled and returned the genealogy records of the 3 clans. Then, he took out the other book and bone fragment that hid the silk. With a wave of his hand, he wanted to divide the book into 3 parts, but Xiao Hua's hand stopped. He raised his hand and the book landed in front of Zhu Cheng. He said, "This item belongs to this old man, but it is closely related to your 3 clans' ancestral temples. Now, this old man will return this item to your clans. As for how to preserve it, you 3 clans can discuss among yourselves. In the future, if other Zhu family descendants come looking for this book, the Zhu family should treat them well." Many thanks, benefactor." Zhu Cheng's voice trembled. He understood that this book was the most important part of opening the ancestral temple. Xiao Hua returning the book to the 3 families was also a generous gift. Xiao Hua glanced at the similarly excited Sun Qing and Zheng Zheng. He knew that these 2 families might not have the opportunity to preserve this book. However, this book was originally obtained by Xiao Hua from the Zhu family of the Xiaoyu continent. Moreover, the 2 families now relied on the Zhu family, so it was natural for the Zhu family to preserve this book. Alright, there's also this bone fragment. Xiao Hua finally flicked the bone fragment in front of Zhu Cheng and said with a smile, "This item is already useless, but it still belongs to the Zhu family. This old man should return it to the Zhu family." Zhu Cheng hurriedly waved his hand. "Although this item is useless, others don't know. Benefactor is merciful and magnanimous. Please take this item away. Moreover, this item belonged to my Zhu family's ancestor. In the future, if Benefactor's descendants and disciples have a use for my Zhu family, please come to my Zhu family with this item. My Zhu family will agree to anything. My Zheng family is the same." Zheng Zheng hurriedly said. Sun Qing also hurriedly echoed, "My Sun family is the same." AI, alright. Xiao Hua actually wanted to settle his karma with the 3 families here. He didn't want to be involved with them in the future. However, looking at Zhu Cheng and the others, he thought for a moment and waved his hand to take back the bone fragment. He nodded and said, "In that case, this old man will also keep this item as a souvenir." Zhu Cheng and the other 2 were overjoyed. Just as they were about to speak, Xiao Hua's figure flickered as he soared into the air and said with a smile, "This old man still has urgent matters to attend to, so I won't be staying here any longer. If fate wills it, we'll meet again in the future." Benefactor? Zhu Cheng and Sun Qing were shocked. They didn't expect Xiao Hua to leave just like that. They hurriedly flew out of the hall to block Xiao Hua, but by the time they flew out, Xiao Hua had already disappeared. Alas, Benefactor is truly a righteous person. He's the best person in the world. Sun Qing stood in the air and sighed. "I've lived for so long, but this is the first time I've seen such a benevolent and righteous person. Alas, it's such a pity that such a good Taoist cultivator was regarded as a demon by the immortal palace." Zhu Cheng bowed deeply in the air and sighed. "Since we have been blessed by you, we should lend you a hand. Although we don't have much power, we can help the people. Our 3 families will use the grain seeds that you have given us as an opportunity to help you spread your name across the world." Good. Sun Qing and the 1 underground both agreed. However, as soon as they answered, the entire earth rumbled and trembled again. It was as if a large hand had lifted Su province from the hidden immortal continent and then suddenly threw it down. Zhu Cheng was shocked when he saw this and hurriedly ordered, "Everyone, there will be a great disaster after the disaster. We still need to borrow the power of our benefactor to eliminate this great disaster. Let's hurry up and get started." But whether it was Sun Qing, or the old and young of Zhujia village, they all moved, not to mention Zhu family, Sun family, and Zheng family gradually spread Taoist Master Zhao's good name in the 9 regions due to the disaster of the hidden immortal continent and the loss of the 6 cauldrons during the chaos of the 6 regions. Xiao Hua flew out of Zhujia village and slightly identified the direction before flying towards the North Sea. Suddenly, Long Mai Xiao Hua's urgent voice sounded, "Fellow Taoist, wait. I sense the aura of the 9 cauldrons?" 9 cauldrons? Shuzhou cauldrons? Xiao Hua was stunned. His figure froze in midair as he asked in a low voice in disbelief. After all, he had just obtained the true explanation of the heavenly book and the origin of metal. Xiaohua didn't expect to be able to get more from Wuyuan County. It should be right. Long Mai Xiaohua said with certainty, this is the aura of the Shuzhou cauldrons that I sensed from the 6 cauldrons. It should be right. There are countless great scholars in Su province, but the most famous ones are Zhu Zi, Zheng Zi, and Sun Zi. Since the 3 sage families are all in Su province, distributed in Wuyuan County, Jingyue County, and Fancheng County, that is to say, these 3 counties have occupied the fate of Su province. If the Shuzhou cauldrons were not here, how could the 3 sages be born? Xiaohua secretly nodded when he heard this. The great scholars and sages mentioned by Confucian students were, in fact, somewhat different from the great scholars and sages of Confucian cultivation. Great Confucian was an honorific title. It was the respect for the old scholars who were virtuous and learned. Sometimes, it had nothing to do with the realm of Confucian cultivation. Even an unarmed old pedant could be called a great Confucian scholar. The so-called Great Confucian family didn't necessarily have a great Confucian scholar in the Confucian realm. Instead, it referred to the fact that a great Confucian family had produced a great Confucian scholar with unique academic achievements. This wasn't something that a simple Confucian cultivator could compare with. Sages were many levels higher than great scholars. They referred to the grandmasters who founded academic schools. They were unique sages. These sages usually came from ancient times and were some leading figures. These figures were almost extinct today. It was impossible for them to appear again. Confucian cultivators actually had a saying that sages of literature were often present, but sages were not present. Literary stars were like stars, while sages were like the moon. Therefore, those who could be called sages could be counted on one's fingers. Confucius, Mencius, Laozi, and the others were sages of Confucian cultivation. Their literary names were like the brilliance of the sun for 10,000 generations. Zhu Zi, Zheng Zi, Sun Zi, Mo Zi, Han Fizi, Zhuang Zi, Sun Tzu, and the other sages of Confucian cultivation were like the moon illuminating the brilliant stars of literature. Fellow Taoist is right. Xiaohua pondered for a moment. He activated the earth escape technique and entered the ground in the direction that Dragon Vein Xiaohua pointed out. He changed his direction and said, although we passed by earlier, the aura of the Shuzhou cauldron was suppressed by the Netherworld Judge's 9 nether origin power and was difficult to detect. Now that the 9 ghost caves are not under the control of the Netherworld Judge, the aura of the Shuzhou cauldron will naturally leak out. It is normal for fellow Taoists to discover it. This is also an opportunity for us. Wuyuan County, Jingyue County, and Fancheng County are the locations of the graceful spirit Bell Spirit. Even the origin of metal will appear. It is normal for the Shuzhou cauldron to be here. Maybe it is because of the aura of the Shuzhou cauldron that attracted the origin of metal here. That is why the Netherworld Judge coveted it. Dragon Vein Xiaohua replied. Hearing this, Xiaohua was shocked. He stopped and said anxiously, if that is the case, I am afraid we cannot take away the Shuzhou cauldron. But Dragon Vein Xiaohua was puzzled. It is very simple. Xiaohua replied. The 3 saints left behind instructions for the descendants of the 3 saints to guard the 3 ghost caves. In other words, the 3 saints did not know that the Shuzhou cauldron was here. Similarly, they did not know that there were 9 ghost caves here. At that time, the Shuzhou cauldron suppressed 9 ghost caves. Among these 9 ghost caves, only 3 of them were able to release the netherworld chi. The other 6 ghost caves were sealed by the Shuzhou cauldron. Even the Netherworld Judge had no way to come out. If we take away the Shuzhou cauldron now, wouldn't the other 6 ghost caves be unable to be suppressed? Fellow Taoist indeed has the world in his heart. He does not put his own interests above everything else. I am very impressed. Dragon Vein Xiaohua said with a smile. However, fellow Taoist neglected something. Since the previous 6 ghost caves did not erupt, they actually appeared now. Naturally, the 9 cauldron formation has been broken. The Shuzhou cauldron is useless here. If fellow Taoist has the heart, after gathering all 9 cauldrons, you can use your great divine ability to lay out the 9 cauldron formation and gather the destiny of the 9 regions again. That is the right way. But the 9 regions 9 cauldron formation, where did you get it? Xiaohua understood that Dragon Vein Xiaohua was right. He could not help but ask with a bitter smile. Dragon Vein Xiaohua said with a smile, I do not know about this. Fellow Taoist. Confucian cultivator Xiaohua said, whoever tied the bell should untie it. In the end, the karma of the 9 regions 9 cauldron formations still lies with the Confucian cultivator clan. Only by refining innate true qi can I lay out the formation. I even feel that innate true qi is the root of Confucian cultivators. Once we master innate true qi, we master the foundation of Confucian cultivators' cultivation. Even if there is no 9 cauldron formation, we can still figure it out ourselves. Don't forget, we still have the innate divine restriction. Even so, I will go down and take a look. Xiaohua nodded. He once again urged his body to go underground. Sure enough, the deeper he went underground, the more netherworld qi there was. It was as if the entire earth was leaking, and the netherworld qi was leaking out from the sieve-like holes. It's over there. Dragon Vein Xiaohua pointed at a place where the netherworld qi was spiraling out from the netherworld qi and said. Xiaohua landed and stretched out his hand to touch it. He said with a bitter smile, I can only touch the void. There is nothing here. Even if this Suzhou cauldron was discovered by others, it would not be easy to take it. The Tao of Fate is the mystery of heaven and earth. How can an ordinary person know about it? Dragon Vein Xiaohua said with a proud smile. Xiaohua was not at ease. He once again escaped to the bottom of the Suzhou cauldron. He looked again and found that the root of the Suzhou cauldron was also overflowing with netherworld qi. He knew that the suppression power of the Suzhou cauldron had already disappeared. At this time, Xiaohua released the 4-colored heaven's core and surrounded the Suzhou cauldron. Then, he carefully urged the 9 flying swords to nail the Suzhou cauldron. Finally, according to the secret technique of the dragon race, he urged Dragon Vein Xiaohua to pull the Suzhou cauldron out from the ground. Rumble. Wuyuan County, Jingyue County, and Fanchang County, several thousand li of the earth trembled. In this huge tremor, Xiaohua pulled the Suzhou cauldron out. This seemingly huge Suzhou cauldron immediately shrunk and turned into a strange object the size of a palm. Chapter 3871. Xiaohua didn't bother to look at the Suzhou cauldron. Instead, he looked at the ground. He saw that the overflowing netherworld qi didn't increase much because of the absence of the Suzhou cauldron. Moreover, after the netherworld qi rushed into the ground, it was gradually dimmed by the yang qi of the hidden immortal continent. Even if it really dissipated to the ground, it wouldn't cause any harm to the people of Suzhou. Lucky! Xiaohua put down his worried heart and looked at the Suzhou cauldron with joy. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of true qi and absorbed it into his middle dantian. Swish! As the Suzhou cauldron entered his dantian, a stream of qi rushed out of the Suzhou cauldron. This qi was like a brush that touched the previously broken image. The whole image began to overflow again, but this time the image was more vivid and more complete. Great! Xiaohua praised. He urged his body to fly out from the ground and flew toward the North Sea again. Not to mention Xiaohua's harvest, he flew to the North Sea to keep the appointment. In the center of the misty immortal palace, there was a magnificent vermilion palace. At first glance, this palace looked similar to the surrounding palaces, but if one looked carefully, they would find that it was much taller than the other palaces. When one flew closer, the palace was like a 10,000 feet tall mountain, making people look up to it. What was even more amazing was that all the palaces and pavilions of the immortal palace prostrated themselves around this palace, as if they were submitting and protecting it. The 9-colored clouds that overflowed above the palace were like sunlight, rain, and dew that constantly scattered in all directions, falling into various parts of the immortal palace. Every time a palace fell into the clouds, the palace would flash with a strange brilliance, and auspicious clouds would surge out from the palace, as if they were responding and thanking the palace for its kindness. In the brilliance of the clouds of this palace, there was a continuous rise and fall of palaces and pavilions. Among them, the most dazzling palace was overflowing with treasure light. Countless huge pillars of chi surged around this palace. Waves of chi rushed into the armor inscriptions everywhere in the palace. Waves of indescribable solemnity were emitted from the armor inscriptions. What was even more unbelievable was that inside the palace, there were streams of chi entangling and dancing like huge dragons. That kind of aura that could make any immortal or mortal suffocate firmly surrounded this palace. On the plaque of this palace, there were 4 ancient and powerful words written on it: Lingyun Palace. This was the center of the Immortal Palace, the place where the immortal emperor of the Immortal Palace summoned the immortal officials to discuss matters. Although the doors of the Lingyun King Palace were not closed, the entire palace was filled with purple clouds. The clouds condensed into a myriad of things and covered everything in the palace. It was impossible to see or hear anything inside the palace. Usually, the heavenly music was faintly discernible, and the peaceful atmosphere of immortal birds and fowls was long gone. 3,000 feet away from the palace, there were no palace maids or immortal officials to be seen. Even the immortal beasts and fowls were obediently avoiding them. No one dared to make a sound. This was because they knew that this was the day when the immortal emperor was discussing matters. Any untimely noise would disturb the Lingyun King Palace, and any mishap could cost them their lives. At this moment, a thunderous sound came from the entrance of the palace. Then, an immortal emperor's decree that was a few feet long and shining with purple light flew out from the clouds. A voice that faintly contained the order of the world came from the decree. Summon the princes of the Dongfang, Shimin, Nangong, and Baiming clans for questioning. As the voice fell, dozens of inscriptions on the armor appeared. These inscriptions on the armor caused the great chi of the Lingyun King Palace to rush into the imperial edict. Roar! The imperial edict emitted an even more dazzling brilliance. 4 by, and emitting a threatening aura flew out from the brilliance. Each of them stepped on the clouds under the imperial edict and ran away. After the immortal emperor's decree flew away, the clouds outside the Lingyun King Palace began to swirl. Small whirlpools rotated and returned to their original state. In just a moment, outside the Lingyun King Palace, 4 well-built young Confucian scholars stepped on the clouds and arrived. These 4 people had different temperaments, different appearances, and different clothes. However, their dignified appearances were very similar. Each of them had a graceful and luxurious smile on their faces. Brother Dongfang, greetings to you. A Confucian scholar with slightly longer cheeks and bright moon-like eyes flew half a step forward. He cupped his hands and smiled at the Confucian scholar closest to him. A few months ago, I wanted to visit you at your residence. However, I heard that you weren't at your residence. I was thinking about when to visit you these past few days. I didn't expect to see you at the Lingyun King Palace today. This is really a joy for me. The Confucian scholar named Dongfang's face was as bright as the moon. His eyes flashed with yellow light. When he heard this Confucian scholar speak, he hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Oh, so it's Brother Shimin. A few months ago, I was indeed not at my residence because I had some matters to attend to. I'm sorry to disappoint you. However, today is just right. Not only is Brother Shimin here, but Brother Nangong and Brother Baiming are also here. The princes of the 4 clans are all here. After the questioning at the Lingyun King Palace, we can have a small gathering." Greetings, Brother Dongfang and Brother Shimin. As they spoke, a square-faced Confucian scholar with fiery red eyes and a chubby Confucian scholar with a round face flew over and greeted them at the same time. The 4 of them greeted each other. The Dongfang heir looked up at the majestic Lingyun King Palace and asked in a low voice, "For brothers, may I know the reason why the immortal emperor suddenly summoned us today?" The Nangong heir shrugged and glanced at the other 3 people. He said helplessly, I don't know. However, since the princes of the 4 clans are all here, I'm afraid there's something important. Since we're in front of the Lingyun King Palace, We can't recklessly guess the emperor's intentions. We'll know once we enter the palace. The beaming heir replied indifferently. However, the four of them looked at each other with a faint tacit understanding. It was as if they had already sensed something. That's right. The Shiman heir nodded and took out a decree from his bosom. He raised it with both hands and said respectfully to the Lingyun King Palace, "Your servant Shiman Cheong Han of the Shiman family kowtows in salute to His Majesty the Immortal Emperor." Seeing Shiman Cheong Han suddenly take out a decree and kowtow, the Dongfang heir's eyes flashed with anger. The Dongfang, Shiman, Nangong, and Baiming families were the four great clans. They had existed even longer than the Kong, Meng, and Sun clans. The Dongfang family was the head of the four great clans. Usually, when the four clans gathered together, the Dongfang family would always be the first to speak. This was an unspoken tacit understanding between them. Shiman Cheong Han's sudden opening of his mouth was understandable in terms of the order of everyone's speech, but in terms of tacit understanding, it was a form of provocation. Not only was the heir of the Dongfang family enraged, even the heirs of the Nangong family and the Baiming family were slightly taken aback. However, a trace of schadenfreude appeared in their eyes as they stood by the side, waiting to see how the heir of the Dongfang family would react. However, the show they wanted to see didn't play out. The Dongfang heir took out a decree and respectfully raised it up high. He raised his voice and said, "Dongfang heir Dongfang Huayan kowtows in salute to His Majesty the Immortal Emperor." Seeing that Dongfang Huayan didn't cause trouble, the Nangong and Baiming heirs looked at each other and took out their decrees at the same time. They respectfully raised them up high and said in unison, "Nangong heir Nangong Jingyin and Baiming heir Baiming Jiqing kowtows in salute to His Majesty the Immortal Emperor." Announce. A majestic voice was transmitted over. Vast clouds surged out of the hall door like rolling waves. They instantly wrapped around the four of them. When the clouds disappeared, the figures of the four of them had also disappeared. The clouds rapidly retracted and landed in front of the Lingyun Treasure Palace. It was the clouds that had crashed into the palace door. Buzz. With a muffled sound, a huge whirlpool appeared. As the light flashed, the four of them were dazzled. Then they landed under a huge dome of heaven. This was a vast sky. Above and below his feet was a boundless sea of nebulas. Between the nebulas, thousands of multicolored lights flashed brilliantly like the afterglow of dusk. And in this brilliance of light and shadow, mountains, rivers, and all kinds of things in the world were faintly circulating. Among these nebulas, the most eye-catching thing was an existence that resembled a blazing sun. It was a golden throne high up in the sky. This golden throne overlooked all things and was the leader of the group. An aura that seemed to be the ruler of all things surged down from the throne and covered the entire sky. At this moment, an emperor that was thousands of feet tall sat on the throne. This emperor wore a sun and moon emperor robe and a crown of heaven and earth on his head. Tens of millions of inscriptions surged around him from time to time, and the providence of hundreds of families danced wantonly like dragons. The terrifying aura on the golden throne was emitted from this emperor. The heirs of the four great clans landed in the hall and glanced at the emperor, whose appearance could not be seen clearly, on the golden throne. They hurriedly bowed again and said, "Your humble subjects greet your majesty. Rise." Although the four princes didn't know how far away the immortal emperor was, when the immortal emperor spoke, the roaring providence dragon immediately froze and the surging inscriptions disappeared. The brilliance on the golden throne carried a majestic voice and landed on the four of them. "Thank you, your majesty." The four of them rose at the same time and stood there with their heads lowered. They didn't dare to say a word. "How many years have you been in the celestial palace?" the immortal emperor asked. Dongfang Huayan rolled his eyes and respectfully replied, "Your servant has been in the celestial palace for 10 years. Your servant has been in the celestial palace for 9 years and 8 months. Your servant has been in the celestial palace for 9 years and 8 months. Your servant has been in the celestial palace for 7 years. The other 3 aristocratic family members also answered in a well-behaved manner. "Yes, Dongfang Huayan has been in the celestial palace for 10 years, and more than 3,000 years have passed in the hidden immortal continent. The immortal emperor nodded and said, "Does Dongfang Huayan miss the hidden immortal continent?" Dongfang Huayan smiled and said, "It would be a lie if I didn't miss it. However, your servant has enjoyed an immortal lifespan in the celestial palace and is also envied by everyone in the clan. Your servant is grateful for your majesty's grace." Chapter 3872. You do have longevity, but it's hard for your cultivation to improve. Minister Dongfang, you're already a literature saint. If you were on the hidden immortal continent, you might already be a literature star. This is also the disadvantage of the immortal palace. Immortal Emperor's tone was comforting, but his voice was like rolling thunder. Your Majesty is joking. Dongfang Huayan didn't dare to be slow and hurriedly replied, "The righteous qi in the immortal palace is countless times denser than the hidden immortal continent. Cultivating in the immortal palace has an exceptionally solid foundation. Although I'm still a literature saint, I'm completely different from 10 years ago. And I also know that cultivating in the immortal palace will allow me to reach literature star sooner or later. But if I cultivated in the hidden immortal continent, I'm afraid I would have already been stuck at the bottleneck." Just like Dongfang Huayan, I'm grateful for your Majesty's grace. Shimin Qionghan seized the opportunity and said, "It's my fortune to be able to cultivate in the immortal palace." Shimin Qionghan's tone was even more humble, and he even called himself Minister. Immortal Emperor nodded and asked, "Imshim, how long has it been since Minister Shimin contacted your family?" Dongfang Huayan saw Shimin Qionghan interrupt again, and the immortal emperor's question landed on Shimin Qionghan. She couldn't help but get angry again. "Your Majesty!" Shimin Qionghan glanced at Dongfang Huayan proudly and respectfully replied, "According to the immortal palace's rules, I'm supposed to contact my family once a year. There's still half a month before the deadline. I should have received the message a year ago." "Minister Dongfang, Minister Nangong, Minister Baiming, you too?" Immortal Emperor asked. Dongfang Huayan, Nangong Jing'an, and Baiming Jiqing hurriedly replied, "Your Majesty, yes, we received the message a year ago. 1 day in the immortal palace is 1 year in the human world. 1 year in the immortal palace is 300 years in the human world. In other words, you haven't received any news from the hidden immortal continent for 300 years? Yes." The four replied respectfully. Immortal Emperor's tone suddenly turned cold. "So you don't know the current situation of the hidden immortal continent?" "You do not know." Dongfang Huayan and the others were surprised as they answered respectfully. However, no one dared to ask further. "And, since that's the case, you can go back and wait." The immortal emperor said indifferently, "If the clan sends a message, ask more about the situation of the hidden immortal continent. Your 4 great clans are guarding my hidden immortal continent, which is the foundation of us Confucian cultivators. Don't be careless." "Yes, we understand." The 4 of them bowed respectfully again and replied, "We will definitely pass on this message to the clan." After the 4 of them left, a ray of light flashed in the sky of the Lingyun Treasure Palace. A dozen celestial generals wearing celestial armor appeared on the right side of the golden chair. These celestial generals were also a few thousand feet tall. The murderous aura on their bodies seemed to have materialized. The noble qi surrounding their bodies was as sharp as the sword qi. As for the left side of the golden seat, there were a few Confucian cultivators in court attire standing asymmetrically. These Confucian cultivators were of different ages, and their height and weight were also different. Although these Confucian cultivators did not have the murderous aura of the immortal general opposite them, the righteous aura that surged around them was not inferior to the immortal generals. As the righteous aura surged, a myriad of phenomena were vaguely born. These Confucian cultivators stood quietly, and their auras were extremely restrained. The person in front was an old man with white hair and beard holding a horsetail whisk. The old man frowned slightly and turned his head to look at the door of the hall, as if he was thinking about something. "Tai Bai Jinxing," the immortal emperor asked, "do you think we can trust these 4 people?" "Your Majesty!" The white-haired Tai-bai Jinxing waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. He withdrew his gaze from the palace door and sneered. Chang Gung thinks that if we believe them, we believe them. If we don't believe them, we don't believe them. Old man, His Majesty is asking you a question. Why are you talking like a monk from the Thunder Sound Temple? Before the immortal emperor could speak, one of the immortal generals roared. His awe-inspiring sword-like awe-inspiring aura rushed over without any hesitation. Hee. Tai-bai Jinxing didn't care. He waved the horsetail whisk and blocked the awe-inspiring aura. He sneered. Tianji Palace has intercepted the messages from the 4 great clans to the 4 princes more than once. They are well aware of it. Since they don't want to admit it, Heavenly King Qin Yu, are you going to force them to admit it? Don't tell me that these 4 brats are constantly communicating with the 4 great clans of the hidden immortal continent. The immortal general called Heavenly King Qin Yu retorted, even the immortal officials under your command, Confucianism, legalism, School of Agriculture, School of Yin-Yang, School of Miscellany, etc. are secretly communicating with the various clans of the hidden immortal continent. Why don't you force them to admit it? The civil officials under this old man's command are mostly from the 100 schools of Confucianism. Although these immortal officials are ranked among the immortals, their origins are from the various great worlds of the hidden immortal continent. They are different from the military schools of the immortal palace. Tai-bai Jinxing seemed to know Heavenly King Qin Yu's temper. He didn't get angry and slowly replied, "This old man can win over some people's hearts, but I can't control everyone's will. Isn't that enough?" Heavenly King Qin Yu's mouth twitched. He wanted to say something. The immortal emperor's voice sounded. Heavenly King Qin Yu hurriedly lowered his head and stopped talking. What Tai-bai Jinxing said was naturally the current situation of the immortal palace. It was also the situation since ancient times. Although the immortal emperor occupied the immortal palace and was the leader of the schools of Confucianism, the power of the military schools couldn't completely control the immortal palace. When the disciples of the 100 schools of Confucianism, legalism, Moism, etc. reached a certain cultivation level, they would definitely choose some people to take up positions in the immortal palace. The positions of these immortal officials might not be very high. However, for many years, the immortal palace's various powers were intertwined. The conflicts and alliances between them were endless. This really gave the immortal emperor a headache. In order to make the immortal palace feel at ease and balance the conflicts between the immortal palace and the hidden immortal continent, the 4 great clans even specially sent the direct descendants of the 4 great clans to the immortal palace as hostages. These methods couldn't stop the conflicts between the various schools of Confucianism. On top of these conflicts, under the negligence of the immortal officials, the immortal emperor felt like he was a mere figurehead. How could Tai-bai Jinxing and the others not know the predicament of the immortal emperor? Hearing the immortal emperor's cold snort, they naturally didn't dare to speak. After a while, the immortal emperor asked, "Did the 4 great clans report to the immortal palace?" Tai-bai Jinxing hurriedly replied, "Reporting to your majesty, this old subject hasn't seen them yet. However, in this old subject's opinion, once their reports arrive, it'll be time for the dagger to be revealed. Does your majesty think their reports are good? Or is it better not to come?" The immortal emperor calmly asked, "What do you think, dear subject?" In this old subject's opinion, your majesty summoned the 4 great clans' heirs today as a warning and also a test. I believe the 4 great clans' heirs aren't fools. They will definitely inform their own clans of your majesty's intentions. At this point, Tai-bai Jinxing hesitated slightly before continuing. In addition, your majesty, this old subject feels that there seems to be a gap between the 4 great clans. Your majesty might as well use this gap to relieve the pressure at this time. Hee, you think you're the only one who can see it? That I don't know? The immortal emperor smiled slightly. If it were any other time, this tactic of sowing discord might be useful. However, at this moment, even if Dongfang Huayan passes this message to the Dongfang clan, he will only be reprimanded and make them wary. Yes, this old subject is slow-witted. Tai-bai Jinxing hurriedly nodded. The immortal emperor asked again, how many of the Immortal Palace's officials are calling for war? Your Majesty, this old subject has already presented 406 memorials to Your Majesty. 361 of them are calling for war. Only 65 of them are for peace. Tai Bai Jingxing methodically replied, as for the 521 memorials that have yet to be presented to Your Majesty, 410 are calling for war, and 111 are calling for peace. After saying this, Tai Bai Jingxing hesitated for a moment before continuing in a low voice. As for the peace memorials, most of them were submitted by my military disciples. The immortal emperor nodded. His tone was somewhat gloomy, as if he was thinking about something. After a moment, he said, "Perfected Lord Qingyun, do you think?" As soon as he said this, the immortal emperor immediately came to a realization and stopped. How could Tai Bai Jingxing not know what the immortal emperor was thinking? He hurriedly smiled and said, "Your Majesty, perfected Lord Qingyun has already been punished and has been banished to Black Ruins Mountain. He is currently not in the Immortal Palace. Actually, Your Majesty, perfected Lord Qingyun is extremely loyal to Your Majesty. He is completely selfless. For the sake of the lives of his subordinates, the giant spirit immortal generals, he spared the Black Wind Ridge's wild path. This is a display of our Immortal Palace's benevolence. Furthermore, how can a wild path compare to a general of our Sun Palace? Your Majesty, there is truly no need to banish perfected Lord Qingyun." "That's right, Your Majesty." Heavenly King Qin Yu hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Perfected Lord Qingyun has acted magnanimously in this matter. He has also clearly stated his grudge with that wild path. If he wanted to play favoritism and commit irregularities, why would he go down to the lower realm? In fact, with just a bit of information, that wild path would have fled long ago. How could he possibly wait for the heavenly network to surround Black Wind Ridge? Black Ruins Mountain is the most dangerous place at the edge of the Immortal Palace. Even this lowly subject doesn't dare to underestimate it. Perfected Lord Qingyuan's strength. Is it because I am willing to banish Sun Jian?" The immortal emperor laughed coldly. "Isn't this all because of their coercion? Don't they want to use this as a pretext to attack my prestige? If I don't banish Sun Jian, I will end up as an incapable ruler. But if I do banish Sun Jian, I will still be the one to suffer. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame Sun Jian for being too upright. He doesn't know how to be flexible. He has some illicit relations with that wild path. Why report it to me? Can't he just keep it to himself? If he speaks of it, won't others be able to use it against him? Tell me, how should I deal with this?" "Actually," Tai Bai Jingxing smiled apologetically. "According to this old subject's knowledge, Sun Gang of the Hall of Enlightenment just happened to be nearby. I'm afraid perfected Lord Qingyun was afraid that others would say something, right?" "Hall of Enlightenment's Sun Gang?" The immortal emperor was slightly taken aback. After a moment, he laughed coldly. "This Sun Gang is merely a child. Why did he descend to the lower realm? Could it be that the always well-behaved XN had other thoughts?" Chapter 3873. Hearing that the celestial emperor was angry, Tai Bai Jingxing hurriedly replied, "Your Majesty, you're overthinking things. The 9th princess has always followed the rules. Sun Gang probably came to the lower realm to watch the show. It shouldn't have anything to do with the 9th princess." "Yes, I hope it has nothing to do with her." The celestial emperor nodded. "However, Sun Jian's matter, let's leave it at that for now. Although the Black Ruins Mountain is dangerous, it's also full of opportunities. If Sun Jian is lucky, he might get something. When that happens, it'll be good for him, for me, and for the Immortal Palace. Sigh, yes, Sun Jian is really unlucky." Heavenly King Qin Yu sighed. "If not for the Confucian officials forcing you to abdicate, how could Your Majesty be so heartless?" Heavenly King Qin Yu, if we were to fight the Buddhists, what do you think are our chances of winning? The celestial emperor changed the topic. Heavenly King Qin Yu almost blurted out, "Naturally, our chances of winning are higher. Although the Buddhists have many disciples, most of them are people who recite scriptures. Although the Buddhists have outstanding strength, there are few of them. Based on this alone, the Buddhists are at a disadvantage. Not to mention, our disciples are all well-versed in military books and formations since young. All of them are talented generals. Not necessarily. Tai Bai Jingxing shook his head. If we were to fight this time, the hidden immortal continent would be the first to bear the brunt of the battle. The Buddhists' Western paradise would not be affected, so the Buddhists have the geographical advantage. Although the Buddhist disciples are incompetent, there are many secular people on both the hidden immortal continent and Western paradise who are loyal to the Buddhists. The Buddhists also have the advantage. Also, the immortal palace is being forced by the hidden immortal continent's Confucian cultivators. Their people might not be united. Some want us to win while others want us to lose. Without the right time, place, and people, how can we win? Even if we win, they'll let the fruits of our victory flow like water, so as to highlight their importance. If we lose, they can get away with their tricks. The Celestial Emperor said coldly. Therefore, we'll definitely lose this battle. The problem is... Heavenly King Qin Yu smiled bitterly. The Buddhists have no choice but to fight. The Buddhist Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body on the hidden immortal continent. Isn't that to provoke the agreement? Aren't you trying to test the bottom line of Confucian cultivators? If my immortal palace doesn't fight, it will cause the 100 schools of Confucian cultivators to be wary of this problem. His Majesty will be forced by them. The most important thing now should be to make Mahavairocana's ambition retreat from the hidden immortal continent and return to the Thunder Temple. Tai Bai Jingxing said thoughtfully. How is this possible? Heavenly King Qin Yu sneered. Right now, Longevity Town's Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect are like fire and water. If the Buddhist sect were to withdraw from Longevity Town, not only would Mahavairocana not dare to do so, even the commoners of the secular world would be unwilling. Vairocana, who has 9th grade elemental energy, is being threatened by commoners without any cultivation. Now that I think about it, it's really funny. Tai Bai Jingxing said in a mocking tone. It's not just Mahavairocana. The Celestial Emperor sneered. Didn't I also get roasted by a bunch of rascals? Could it be that we can only fight? Is there no other way? Tai Bai Jingxing said in a low voice. He turned around to look at the military immortal officials behind him. They all had their heads lowered and didn't say anything. Clearly, they knew they couldn't change the situation. Then he looked at the immortal generals behind Heavenly King Qin Yu. They all had cold expressions and weren't afraid of fighting. However, the problem now was that they couldn't fight, but they could not fight either. Also, my dear subject, yesterday, Tianji Hall sent a message to me. What are the strange insects found at the northern border of the hidden immortal continent? Did you ask them about it? The Celestial Emperor asked for no reason. Tai Bai Jingxing was a little distracted. He smiled and said, Your Majesty, the northern border of the hidden immortal continent is close to the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. It's inevitable that there will be some demons. Tai Bai Jingxing paused and raised his snow-white eyebrows. He said in surprise, Your Majesty, could it be that the Thousand Demons' sacred realm? However, before he could finish speaking, the golden light above the golden throne suddenly shone brightly. Swoosh! The golden light flashed and completely covered the entire Lingyun Palace that was like the sky. Within this golden light, billions of inscriptions on the armor were like countless wasps flying around. Layers upon layers of strange ripples appeared. Numerous fist-sized crystal threads were born from these inscriptions, distorting the entire Lingyun Palace. Your Majesty! Tai Bai Jingxing and the others turned pale with fright. They closed their eyes and didn't dare to look directly at the emperor. Woo! In just a few breaths of time, all of the strange phenomena had retreated back into the 1,000-foot-long body on the golden throne. Even the brilliance on the crown of heaven and earth had retracted, revealing the dignified appearance of a middle-aged man with a plump chest in the heavenly court. At this moment, there was only shock on the man's face. His natural grace was completely hidden. Your Majesty, this? Heavenly King Qin Yu hurriedly asked. Court is dismissed. However, the immortal emperor didn't answer Heavenly King Qing Yu's question. With a wave of his sun and moon imperial robe, countless images of the sun and moon flashed across the palace. The entire sky collapsed with a rumble. Xie Xen of the Heavenly Secrets Palace. Yes. The immortal generals and immortal officials didn't know what was going on, but they didn't dare to ask. They hurriedly bowed and flew out of the palace. Old man Tibai. After leaving the Lingyun Palace, Heavenly King Qing Yu hurriedly transmitted his voice. Your Majesty, what's going on? Did something happen on the hidden immortal continent? Yes, the Hall Master of the Heavenly Secrets Palace has already been summoned. It must be something big. Taibai Jingxing's face was also filled with confusion. Perhaps it has something to do with that strange insect? Forget it, Heavenly King Qing Yu. His Majesty will definitely tell us when he wants us to know. Since he hasn't said anything now, it must be because the time isn't right. In this old man's opinion, Heavenly King should quickly gather the troops and wait for His Majesty's decree. Yes, this one understands. Heavenly King Qing Yu nodded and left with the immortal generals. When they flew out of the Lingyun Palace, a young scholar in court attire flew over with a folding fan in his hand. Greetings, lords. When the scholar saw Taibai Jingxing, Heavenly King Qing Yu and the others, he hurriedly lowered his cloud and bowed. Lords, you have just come out of the Lingyun Palace. Do you know why His Majesty has summoned this one? Heavenly King Qing Yu frowned when he saw this handsome scholar with a full face and slanted eyebrows. He said indifferently, this old man doesn't know. Xie Xen, you should quickly go in and see His Majesty. Yes, this one understands. This person was naturally the Hall Master of the Heavenly Secrets Palace, Xie Xen. He bowed slightly and cupped his hands towards Taibai Jingxing and the others before flying into the Lingyun Palace. Damn it, this old man doesn't like this rabbit. Heavenly King Qing Yu cursed. I don't know what His Majesty sees in him. Shoo! Taibai Jingxing shushed him. Hall Master Xie is good at scheming and knows everything. He is a good choice to be in charge of the Heavenly Secrets Palace. You and I are both lacking in this aspect. If His Majesty wants to see the heavenly secrets of the world, he naturally has to rely on the Hall Master of the Heavenly Secrets Palace. This old man just doesn't like the look of him. So what? Heavenly King Qing Yu snorted and cupped his hands before flying away. Taibai Jingxing stopped in the air and looked in the direction of the Lingyun Palace. He seemed to be worried about something. After a while, he sighed and slowly flew away. When the Hall Master of Heaven's Secret Hall, Xie Xen, flew into the Lingyun Treasure Palace, the Grand Hall no longer looked like a vault. Instead, it looked more like an ordinary Grand Hall. The immortal emperor was sitting behind a jade table. His fingers were slightly moving, and strands of vast crystal threads were revolving around his body. Circles of turtle-like wrinkles appeared in midair, and images were faintly discernible from these wrinkles. Xie Xen entered the palace and walked to the embroidered chair in front of the jade table. He slowly sat down and closed his eyes as if he was resting. After half a cup of tea's worth of time, the celestial emperor shook his hands, and all the veins and vast crystal threads disappeared. Then he sighed and looked at Xie Xen. Minister Xie, you must have noticed it, right? Yes, Your Majesty. Xie Xen stood up and replied respectfully. That is the aura of the Holy Light Realm's holy artifact. Previously, this old man didn't understand and thought that this old man was mistaken. Since you said so, then there is no mistake. The immortal emperor nodded. However, the Holy Light Realm's holy artifact was destroyed during the Great War between the Holy Light Realm, the Buddhist kingdom, and the spiritual realm. Although the Great War didn't involve the Heavenly Court, the aftermath of the war affected the Heavenly Court. Even now, the communication channel between the Heavenly Court and the hidden immortal continent hasn't been restored. I don't know what the Heavenly Court is like now. When did the Holy Light Realm's holy artifact fall on the hidden immortal continent? The Heavenly Court hasn't sent any message yet. Especially when I am using the Haotian mirror to check the changes on the hidden immortal continent. This holy artifact of the Holy Light Realm has fallen on the hidden immortal continent. It's impossible for someone to use it before I found out. It's true that the Haotian mirror checks the world. There are many people who can reverse yin and yang. It's normal for the Haotian mirror to miss something. Xie Xen stood in front of the embroidered chair and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, what you want to know is that the Holy Light Realm's aura has not been destroyed in the Great War of the Three Realms, but was lost. At this time, it appeared on the hidden immortal continent." What does it mean? Your Majesty should be concerned about who activated it and the purpose of the people from the Holy Light Realm. The hidden immortal continent is different from the immortal palace. When the Holy Light Realm's aura came, the person who activated it had already left. Before you came, this old man had already checked with the Haotian mirror. The Holy Light Realm's location should be near Su province. Just now, I also checked with the tortoise-shell divination technique and didn't find anything strange. I think the people from the Holy Light Realm must have covered the yin and yang. I'm afraid it's very difficult to find this person in the hidden immortal continent. Su province is under the control of the military school. However, Su province is very big. We can't explain the Holy Light Realm's aura. It's also troublesome for the people from the mortal world to find it. Xie Xen raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "However, the Holy Light Realm's appearance at this time is good news for your Majesty." Chapter 3874. That's right, you're right. The Celestial Emperor clapped his hands and laughed, His Previous Majesty gone. I was just worried about the war between us and the Buddhists. Now, I'm sure Mahavarakana knows about the story of the fisherman taking advantage of the sandpiper and the clam. I don't believe he dares to take the risk and fight me while the enemy of the Holy Light World is here. Indeed. Xie Xen smiled. I'm sure Mahavarakana can sense the aura of the Nirvana realm better than your Majesty. The Buddhists are the enemy of the Holy Light World, not the Confucians of the hidden immortal continent. He must be thinking about how to ease the conflict between them. This is a serious matter. Xie Xen, I appoint you as my envoy to the Thunder Temple. The Celestial Emperor smiled. Discuss the war with Mahavarakana. As long as Mahavarakana agrees to a truce, why should I be afraid of the 100 schools? In my opinion, why don't we invite the envoy from the Thunder Temple to the Celestial Palace? Xie Xen shook his head. After all, the Holy Light World is the enemy of the Buddhists. It's reasonable for them to invade the Longevity Town. Oh my dear! Mahavarakana is now sitting on the fishing platform, but I'm sitting on the hot pot. The situation is completely different. We both know the situation, so I have to speak first. How about this, Your Majesty? Xie Xen thought for a while and said, I can go to the Thunder Temple as an envoy, but I'll have to ask Your Majesty to talk to Mahavarakana personally. That's fine. The Celestial Emperor nodded. I'll do as you say. Xie Xen wanted to say yes, but the Celestial Emperor suddenly had a thought and ordered, How about this, Xie Xen? Didn't you say that there were demonic insects attacking the hidden immortal continent? Why don't we invite Mahavarakana and the golden-winged great sage to the Celestial Palace? The Natural Selection Conference is about to begin. Why don't we bring it forward and invite them to watch the ceremony together? Your Majesty's arrangement is very thoughtful. I have no objections. Xie Xen bowed. I'll arrange it now. As Xie Xen spoke, he suddenly seemed to have thought of something. After pondering for a while, he said, Your Majesty, it seems that the Empress' birthday is coming soon. If possible, why don't we put them all together? That's right. The Immortal Emperor slapped his forehead and said, I was so anxious about political affairs that I almost forgot about such an important matter. If it weren't for your reminder, I would have made a mistake. This subject will take his leave. Xie Xen bowed and left. After Xie Xen left, the Immortal Emperor raised his head and looked at the ceiling of the Lingyun Palace. The Supreme Heavenly Mirror was shining faintly in the middle of the ceiling. After a while, the Immortal Emperor said faintly, I have the Supreme Heavenly Mirror, but I can't search the entire continent. Accidents will always happen when it's possible. While the Immortal Emperor of the Immortal Palace was feeling depressed, within the Thunderclap Temple, the myriad Buddhas were resting in silence. Only the Mahavairakana Buddha and the Namo Dipankara Archaic Buddha were present in the Buddha hall. The Dipankara Archaic Buddha asked, "Lord of the world, is there any news from the Manjushri?" Amitabha. 10 days ago, the Manjushri sent a Buddhist certificate stating that the longevity town is in danger. Other than the various major families' provocations, the disciples of the 4 major families are also secretly making their moves. If it weren't for the Manjushri, the 99 feet golden body would have been destroyed long ago. The Mahavairakana Buddha said in a low voice, "It seems like it's time to make a decision. Then, will the Lord of the world fight or not?" The Dipankara Archaic Buddha pressed his palms together and said, "I'm sure the Lord of the world is still hesitating?" Amitabha. The Dipankara Archaic Buddha is right. The Mahavairakana Buddha Exalt also pressed his palms together and said, "In any war, there will be a lot of casualties. The remnants of the immortals and Buddha's war against the Taoism have yet to be eliminated. How can we fight again? If you're the main body of the Buddha kingdom, you'll definitely disagree. This war isn't decided by my Buddhism." The Dipankara Archaic Buddha shook his head and said, "Moreover, wherever the Buddha light reaches, if there aren't heavenly flowers and Buddhist chants, there will only be blood and slaughter." That's right. I'm sure the immortal emperor of the immortal palace is feeling worse than me. He can't decide whether to fight or not. The Mahavairakana Buddha Exalt smiled and said, "He's like an ant in a dilemma. Actually, the Lord of the world is wrong." The Dipankara Archaic Buddha smiled and said, "I'm asking about Ananda." Amitabha. Speaking of Ananda, the Mahavairakana Buddha Exalt's face revealed a rare look of worry. He said in a low voice, "The Manjushri hasn't found Ananda's reincarnation. However, I have some insights. If Ananda appeared in the buried immortal continent, the Manjushri wouldn't return empty-handed." The Lord of the world only has some insights? The Dipankara Archaic Buddha was shocked and asked in a low voice, "If that's the case, where's the Mahavairakana Buddha of Namo? The Lord of the world didn't even have any insights?" Indeed. The Mahavairakana Buddha Exalt smiled bitterly and said, "I can only sense the Mahavairakana Buddha's descent in our 3 continents. I can also sense Ananda's return. However, where they are and how they returned to our Thunder Sound Temple, I have no idea." Sigh, the great war of the 3 realms has affected too much. The Dipankara Archaic Buddha also sighed and said, "Our Thunder Sound Temple doesn't even know that the Samantabhadra's 3 transformations golden body has descended into the blessed land world. What a joke." At this point, a strange expression appeared on the faces of the 2 Buddha lords at the same time. The light wheel of Buddha behind the Mahavairakana world venerable, which was larger than 90 feet, suddenly began to rotate. The light wheel of Buddha on the light wheel, which was as thin as hair, suddenly rushed into the void. The light wheel of Buddha extended rapidly toward the end of the void. As the light wheel of Buddha shone on the light wheel of Buddha, countless psyche power was generated from within, blocking everything that was destroying the light wheel of Buddha in the void. At the same time, on the Mahavairakana Buddha Exalt's golden body, countless swastikas formed golden swastikas of various sizes. They started rotating even more crazily. Waves of strange fluctuations rushed out of the Thunder Sound Temple from the golden body and rushed towards the blessed land world. Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha. Chants of sutras resounded in the Pure Land. Countless streams of pure willpower rushed out from all over the continent, fusing with the Buddha's light, fusing with the waves. After the time it took to finish a meal, the Buddha lights that filled the sky gradually retracted. Only then did the Mahavairakana Buddha Exalt's golden body and light wheel return to their original state. The Dipankara Archaic Buddha asked, "Exalt, is it the Paramitha realm?" "That's right, it's the Paramitha realm." A miserable expression appeared on the Mahavairakana Buddha Exalt's face. He looked even more miserable than the Dipankara Archaic Buddha, the sacred light world's sacred artifact. Legend has it that it was destroyed on the Paramitha realm during the Great War of the 3 realms. Where is it? Even the Dipankara Archaic Buddha couldn't help but urge, if the Exalt obtains it, our Buddha kingdom will have another supreme Buddhist treasure. Sigh, This item should be in the hidden immortal continent, said the Mahavarakana Buddha, exult with a sigh. This item can only be used by those who possess the sacred light world's sacred light. How can the hidden immortal continent's Confucian cultivators wield it? Asked the Dipankara archaic Buddha curiously. The Mahavarakana Buddha, exult, said nonchalantly, since our Buddha kingdom's power of rebirth can wield it, the Confucian cultivators' true chi might be able to use it as well. But when did the Permitha realm land in the hidden immortal continent? If the Confucian cultivators can't detect it, how can the exalt not detect it? Haven't things that I can't detect happened a lot recently? Said the Mahavarakana Buddha, exult with a bitter smile. Maybe everything is controlled by the Permitha realm's user. Sigh. The Dipankara archaic Buddha sucked in a cold breath and said softly, the exalt means that the Permitha realm was brought to the hidden immortal continent by the sacred light world's people. In order to cover up this matter, they tampered with karma. That's why the exalt can't detect Ananda and the Maitreya Buddha's reincarnation? Even the Permitha realm is controlled by the sacred light world's people? That should be the case. If that's the case, the sacred light world's people must be up to something. They can't defeat our Buddha kingdom, so they came to our blessed land world. Are they trying to topple our Buddha kingdom's foundation? Amitabha. The Dipankara archaic Buddha is right, said the Mahavarakana Buddha, exult. If that's the case, the war between the immortals and Buddhas is nothing. Amitabha, Amitabha. The Dipankara archaic Buddha nodded. Exalt, our Thunder Sound Temple will have to make a long-term plan. Amitabha. The Mahavarakana Buddha, exalt, closed his eyes and pondered. The hidden immortal continent was filled with hostility. All the major families were preparing their troops and setting their sights on the Yu province's Longevity Town. They raised their commanding hands high and waited for the Longevity Town's bugle horn to sound. Then, the flames of war would spread everywhere and slay the Buddhist sons of Buddhas. The Pure Land's morale was high. All the Buddhist kingdom's monk soldiers were rubbing their fists and rubbing their palms. They all set their sights on the Yu province's Longevity Town. Similarly, they were waiting for the Guanyin Bodhisattva's golden body to collapse. Then, the Thunder Sound Temple's Buddhist light would illuminate the world. The Buddhist kingdom's disciples were about to invade the hidden immortal continent to kill the Confucian cultivators and save the sons of Buddhas. However, no one would have thought that Xiao Hua, who was in Su province, in the Fengxiang country, and in Wuyuan county, would gently wave the willow branch and change the situation. Whether it was the immortal emperor of the immortal palace or the Mahavarakana Buddha, exalt, of the Thunder Sound Temple, they all had to change their minds. Tens of millions of creatures were saved because of this wave of the willow branch. What Xiaohua didn't know was that on a pale land, among the undulating white bone palaces, a judge who was hundreds of feet tall and wearing a scarlet official robe suddenly rushed out of one of the palaces. This judge held the life and death book in his left hand and the soul hooking brush in his right hand. As soon as he flew out of the palace, he immediately turned into a strange black fog and flew toward a direction. However, just as he flew past a gray river, the rolling black fog suddenly stopped in midair. Immediately, the black fog seemed to explode. With a boom, it rushed high into the sky and condensed into a fierce ghost that was thousands of feet tall. Duanmu Liangxing, Duanmu Liangxing. You dare to kill this official's doppelganger. You really don't want to live anymore. Good, in that case, this official will let you know how powerful this official is. You think this official's doppelganger is easy to kill? After killing this official's doppelganger, there will be a mark in your soul. This official will go to the Sunluo temple to check your soul mark and see your reincarnation. This official will make you beg for death, and death will make you beg for life. And the Duanmu family. This official will not let you live in peace. Chapter 3875. Woo! After the malicious ghost finished speaking, it opened its mouth and a dragon-shaped hurricane rushed into the river from the sky. Woo-woo! A burst of heart-wrenching cries came from the river. Countless wandering souls with broken limbs were sucked out of the river and struggled to fall into the malicious ghost's mouth. The malicious ghost seemed to be still angry. It coldly snorted and a huge fist appeared in front of its chest. With a boom, it hit the mountain next to the river. A mountain several hundred li in size was destroyed. Layers of underworld fruits fell from the mountain and crystal-clear soul beads were shattered. The soul strands in the soul beads rushed into the air and turned into shapeless wandering souls that floated in all directions. Some sank into the river, some flew into the air, and some disappeared. After venting his anger, the magistrate's figure gradually shrank. The malicious ghost image turned into a black fog and roared as it flew towards a place in the palace. Poor Xiaohua, he thought that by pretending to be Duanmu Liangsheng, he would be able to frame the magistrate of hell for killing his clone. But what he didn't expect was that the magistrate of hell was still a magistrate of hell after all. There were many ways to find him. He still didn't know when the magistrate of hell would make a move on Xiaohua. At this time, Xiaohua didn't have time to care about what would happen in the future. He was now very interested in doing Yu Lao's shady business. After coming out of Wuyuan County's Zhujia village, Xiaohua immediately came across the Shuzhou cauldron. After collecting the Shuzhou cauldron, he immediately turned invisible and flew towards the North Sea. While flying, he frowned and thought about Zhu Cheng's words. But after flying for half a day, Xiaohua felt that something was wrong. He immediately took out the heavenly horse and the flying carriage. He also took Fujiwen out. Sure enough, the direction was a bit off. Xiaohua was really helpless. He angrily let Fujiwen drive the flying carriage and threw a Qinkuan pouch to Fujiwen, telling him to sprinkle some seeds down there. He took out the Kunlun mirror and pretended to release Yu Zhongquan and Chang Yuan from the space. As soon as the two appeared on the flying car, Xiaohua smiled. The two of them didn't notice that they had been moved out of the space by Xiaohua. Yu Zhongquan was still lying there with his eyes closed and a look of indifference on his face. Even his head was tilted to one side and his fingers were slowly moving like a tiny ant. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't move, he would have already flown away. As for Chang Yuan, she lowered her head and carefully helped Yu Zhongquan wipe off the sweat on his forehead with a piece of silk. Xiaohua could tell at a glance that this piece of silk was torn from Chang Yuan's clothes. At this moment, Yu Zhongquan could not help but groan. Clearly, the netherworld energy in his body had begun to act up. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. "Yu Lang." Chang Yuan's heart ached as she whispered, "You have to bear with it." "I know. I don't need you to tell me that," Yu Zhongquan said. His eyes were still closed, but his teeth had already bitten his lips. His lips were ashen. Immediately, Yu Zhongquan's body involuntarily twitched. The netherworld energy and the true energy in Yu Zhongquan's body were entangled. Waves of noble qi were like small snakes scuttling around the surface of his body. Seeing the blue veins on Yu Zhongquan's forehead bulging and the blood on the surface of his skin gradually disappearing, Xiaohua raised his finger a bit. Just as he was about to move, he heard Yu Zhongquan shout, "Chang Yuan, you are shameless. Why aren't you leaving? You and I are just engaged, we haven't married yet. How can we have skin contact? Do you know what it means to see no evil, to hear no evil, to speak no evil, and to move no evil?" What Yu Lang said, this concubine doesn't understand. Who would have thought that Chang Yuan was not moved at all and whispered, "This concubine only knows that a woman's virtue is to have no talent. If Yu Lang is alive, this concubine is Yu Lang's wife. If Yu Lang is gone, this concubine is Yu Lang's widow. Your grandmother, are you crazy? I haven't died yet, and you want to curse me?" But Yu Zhongquan angrily cursed, but before he could finish, he screamed. His body suddenly stopped moving, and another wave of sweat fell down. Chang Yuan bit her lips and wiped the sweat off Yu Zhongquan's face with a silk handkerchief. Then, she wiped the sweat off Yu Zhongquan's body along his neck. Yu Zhongquan's lips moved and he said in a hoarse voice, Don't touch me. Damn Chang Yuan, don't you know?" However, no matter what he said, Chang Yuan's face still turned red. She closed her eyes and stretched her arm into Yu Zhongquan's clothes, trying her best to wipe. Perhaps it was an accident. She didn't know where she touched, but Yu Zhongquan suddenly moved. His face revealed an awkward expression, as if he wanted to laugh but couldn't. His weak arm trembled slightly. Although the attentive Chang Yuan closed her eyes, she immediately felt it. She hurriedly opened her eyes and asked, "Yu Lang?" At this moment, the Pegasus flapped its wings and passed through a cloud. The sound of the wind stirring could be heard. Chang Yuan was slightly startled. She hurriedly raised her head and saw Xiao Hua's smiling face. "Master?" Chang Yuan felt a burst of shyness. She hurriedly tried to pull her arm out of Yu Zhongquan's clothes, but the more she was busy, the more she made mistakes. She didn't know where her arm was hanging, so she couldn't pull it out no matter what. Chang Yuan's face was as red as blood. The thick-skinned face she had when facing Yu Zhongquan earlier had long disappeared. Hearing Chang Yuan call him master, Yu Zhongquan slightly opened his eyes. Chang Yuan didn't tell Yu Zhongquan Xiao Hua's name, nor did she tell him about her situation in the Yu clan. She only said that her master saved Yu Zhongquan, and she was here to serve him under her master's orders. Moreover, Yu Zhongquan was saved by Xiao Hua after he fainted in the ghost cave, so he didn't know that Chang Yuan's master was Xiao Hua. When Yu Zhongquan saw the familiar face, he was stunned at first, but then he said in surprise, You are immortal, Xiao?" Xiao Hua stood with his hands behind his back and replied with a smile, "Other than this Xiao, is there anyone else in this world who is so handsome?" Not to mention Yu Zhongquan's reaction, Chang Yuan was first stupefied. She looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief. She didn't understand why this master of hers, whose magical power reached the heavens, would say such frivolous words. Of course, such a handsome person like master is rarely seen in the world. Only the princess of the immortal palace is worthy of you. Fu Jiwen, who was driving the carriage at the front, chuckled and said, "Of course, master's disciple is also as handsome as Jade, peerless in his generation. If others are blind, then there's no way." Senior martial brother. At this time, Chang Yuan noticed that in addition to her master, that cheap senior martial brother was also driving the carriage at the front, so her face became even redder. Xiao Hua unhappily rolled his eyes at Fu Jiwen and said, "You found yourself a female official of the immortal palace and wanted master to help you, so you wanted to find master a princess, right?" "Hee, that's not it. Didn't disciple see junior martial sister so infatuated, so I thought of my wife in the immortal palace far away? Disciple is separated from immortal my humble wife, and it's not easy for us to even see each other. But when this guy looks at junior sister, he's not moved at all." Fu Jiwen said again, but unfortunately, before he could finish, Xiao Hua waved the Kunlun mirror and said, "This is a matter between the two of them. It has nothing to do with you. Go back and rest first." "Yes, master." Fu Jiwen knew that Xiao Hua had something to say to Yu Zhongquan alone, so he smiled and entered the Kunlun wonderland. "Yu Zhongquan, we meet again." Xiao Hua turned his head and looked at the lying Yu Zhongquan. He didn't help him up and said with a smile, Yes, immortal Xiao." Yu Zhongquan sighed and said, "The last time we met, immortal Xiao saved my life, and this time, you saved my life again. I don't know how to thank immortal Xiao." Speaking of this, Yu Zhongquan thought of something and hurriedly asked, "By the way, immortal Xiao, how are Zhu Xiang and my other friends?" Seeing that Yu Zhongquan had woken up and didn't ask about anything else but Zhu Xiang, Xiao Hua knew that the current Yu Zhongquan was the same as the previous Yu Zhongquan. His temperament hadn't changed, so he replied with some regret, "When this old man arrived, it was too late. Yu, Song Zixiong and the others were all saved by this old man, but Zhu Xiang died in the ghost cave. However, you don't need to be sad for him, he got what he wanted. That's why he left, but he lived in the hearts of the Zhu family. At the same time, he changed Zhu Cheng's view of him, and he achieved his goal." Yes. Yu Zhongquan sighed. Uncle Zhu was indeed too harsh on him, even this you felt indignant for him. Being harsh has its benefits, and being relaxed has its drawbacks. Xiao Hua said with a double meaning, "Some people are so relaxed that they don't even go home, and they only cause trouble for their family." "Who caused trouble?" Yu Zhongquan stiffened his neck and said, "This Yu upholds justice on behalf of the heavens, and gets rid of all the evildoers in the world. Your wish is good, your action is also good, but the consequences are not good. Xiao Hua ruthlessly interrupted his words and said indifferently, don't forget that you are a descendant of the Yu family, and your actions represent the Yu family. You may not think that you are causing trouble, but the trouble has already come to the Yu family. Master, Chang Yuan worriedly said, can you first treat Yu Lang's injuries? Good disciple, don't worry. Xiao Hua said with a smile, with this master here, the ghost energy of the underworld won't dare to come out. Yes, master. Chang Yuan didn't dare to question Xiao Hua, and nervously looked at Yu Zhongquan. She wanted to help him up, but Yu Zhongquan didn't pay attention to her. My Yu family is a scholarly family. Although it is only from the 7th class, this Yu is no longer an ignorant youth, and will act appropriately. Yu Zhongquan didn't care. Xiao Hua looked at Chang Yuan with a smile and said, Disciple, tell Yu Zhongquan what you encountered. Yes, master. Chang Yuan worriedly looked at Yu Zhongquan and told him what happened. Yu Zhongquan's pale face became more and more bloodless. After all, if Xiao Hua didn't appear, not to mention Chang Yuan being taken away, even the Yu family would have suffered a disaster. To Yu Zhongquan, Xiao Hua was not just a life-saving grace. Even when Yu Zhongquan glanced at Chang Yuan, the disdain in his eyes seemed to have changed. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.